and welcome to the live stream. Thanks for joining us wherever you are. Slightly earlier time slot. I hope that hasn't inconvenienced anyone, and indeed hope it's made it more convenient for some of you wherever you are in the world. As I say, welcome. Usual weather update here in Spain. A bit rainy the last couple of days. Yeah, there are patches of sunshine, so you can still get out there, and Dexter can take me for a walk. But generally speaking, a little bit rough. We actually had a mild earthquake, would you believe, 2.6 on the Richter scale last week. It's like a bit tremor. What was that? Oh, okay, yeah, right, okay, fair enough. So yeah, no, but everything good, and I hope it is with you too. A little bit sad times at the moment with all these events going on around the world. These disastrous things, really. I mean, it's just we're lucky to live in this world of motor racing where we can kind of divert our attention, but at the same time, of course, what we learn in motor racing can often be applied, I think, into real life, and we talk about that a little bit on the show. Anyway, without dwelling on that, I have to record the passing of two dear friends, actually, and I'm going to do that in an upbeat way, because what's the point of being in any other form? The first is my dear friend Gerry Donaldson, a wonderful Canadian journalist who I met back in the 80s when he started coming to races with Gilles Villeneuve, when he became successful. He did that initial run at McLaren and then subsequently at Ferrari, of course. And he was just a lovely, humble, sweet man, beautiful writer. I've got one of his books here right with me now, Grand Prix People. I think he wrote, I don't know, at least 13, 14 books. And what I used to love about Gerry was catching up with him over the first race of the new season to see what he'd been doing over the winter, because he always used to hibernate, I think that was the right word, to a log cabin somewhere in the Rockies, and literally, would just write and do his thing. And he's a very fit guy. He used to go running a lot as well, and of course hiking. And we used to catch up and have a laugh over that. And very mild-mannered, softly spoken, lovely person. Gilles actually took to him straight away, and he wrote the definitive book on Gilles Villeneuve. So if you want to know about Gilles, read Gerry's book. There's no doubt about that. Nigel Roebuck too has written some very good stuff on Gilles. And I think it was a sign of the times, maybe, but also a sign of the respect Gilles had for Gerry, that Gerry once told us the story of ringing Gilles. Gerry was in Canada, Gilles was in Monaco, and just wanted to check something with Gilles. And this was not over a book they were doing. This was to do with a race that had just happened, just wanted to interview him, brace basically. And Gilles' first reaction on picking up the phone was, "Gerry, this phone call must be costing you a fortune. Let me ring you back." A, that says a lot about Gilles. B, it says a lot about the times, I guess. And C, I guess inevitably you ask yourself whether any of today's Grand Prix drivers, if you pick the phone up to ring them, would say, "Oh, I don't want you to spend any money on this. Let me ring you back." Yeah, right. Anyway, Gerry Donaldson, we'll miss you, Gerry. Had a great life, wonderful person, and thanks for everything you did. And then we've also lost Michael Turner, who was for decades just part of the Grand Prix Formula One establishment as a wonderful artist, and produced paintings, and you can buy prints of those, you still can, obviously. But every year, I mean, this was his signature thing. Every year he would paint 6 renditions of that season and produce them as Christmas cards. And I used to do that all the time. Every year it was just like, wow, I can't wait to get my order in for my 6 Michael Turner Christmas cards, each different. And they'd all arrive, and you'd order 4 or 5 packets of them and send them off to all your friends. And it was just a wonderful thing. And Michael was just there. He was there at virtually every race, cameras dangling around his neck. And here he is. Here he is with Paul-Henri Caillet, Bernard Caillet's son, one year. And you can see exactly what I just said about the cameras. That's Michael on the right, obviously. Lovely, sweet man. Again, humble, very like Gerry in many ways. And here's a picture I took of him with... probably the same race, actually, judging by the Olympus cameras. The Rainer Schlegelmilch in the middle, another brilliant photographer, German photographer. And Jackie Ickx, obviously, on the phone there. And if you look closely, you'll actually see that we're on the wrong side of the fence there, and that's the Formula One paddock behind us at Monaco. And there's a story behind that, actually, because I was walking down that little sort of pathway which you can take to get back into the pit lane, and it was very crowded. It was Sunday morning, well, Saturday morning maybe, and probably Saturday morning. It's very, very crowded. Everybody's worried about somebody falling into the harbour at that point. And there was Jackie X coming towards me. I said, Jackie, how are you? And we had a slight chat, as much as you can, with somebody in that situation. And he said, I'm trying to find it's a very deep voice, I'm trying to find Pasquale because he has promised me a pass to get into the paddock. And I thought, typical that they didn't actually get him the pass before he came to Monaco, and he has to go through all this rigmarole to get the pass from Bernie's motorhome. So I ran back into the paddock and actually found Pasquale. And I'll never forget the moment, actually. I said, Jackie X is outside. He says that, I think you got a pass for him, Pasquale. I could maybe take it to him now if it makes it. And he sort of rolled his eyes like, not Jackie X again, sort of thing. And I just thought, that is so typical of modern Formula One. No respect at all for somebody like Jackie X. Anyway, Michael Turner was there, and he thought it was all very ridiculous as well. But Michael was a lovely man. He loved flying as well, and he was very good friends actually with my dad. Well, I say friends, they had a lot in common, flying light aircraft, and often met at Tiger Moth meets and other events. And his art was just gorgeous. He was just a very charming, lovely person. And for sure he's got an unbelievable number of photographs, because he took, I don't know how many photographs he would take, but in the days when photographers could really get out on the circuit, he would take every car from every angle. And that's obviously how he would use he would get his Christmas card, or he'd paint his pictures. But the beauty of Michael was that he would paint the picture then from his imagination based on where he would be in a perfect world, rather than this is the photograph I took and I will take a picture of that photograph. Most artists probably do that, but Michael was very good at that. I'm just going to go through them now. That was one of my favorites, obviously because it's Jimmy winning the Indy 500 in '65. But and you'll see the four corners have got sort of grubby brown marks on them. That's actually old sticky tape marks. I had it on my wall, my bedroom wall in Australia. So there you go, that one. This is actually the thumbnail I used for the live stream today, and I hope you enjoyed that. This is a painting. Again, nobody got that moment of Carlos Reutemann passing Niki Lauda, who's on the outside in the Parmalat Brabham, to win the '78 British Grand Prix, Bruno Giacomelli in the middle being lapped. But there's Michael putting himself in exactly the right position to capture that moment. And Carlos, of course, loved that card and sent it to me actually for Christmas that year. In the days when everybody sent Christmas cards, it's funny. I think the rot set in when Alan Gow, one of my mates, sent me an email about, I don't know, it's probably 10 years ago now, saying I'm not sending any more Christmas cards. They are no longer applicable, or something like that. Some Australian thing. Not even digital cards these days. I think it breaks their heart. Anyway, Christmas cards were always a wonderful thing. This was, I know Jack Brabham sent that out in 1970 when he won the British Grand Prix, but also nearly won the World Championship. There's Jochen behind him. And that's a lovely shot, Brands Hatch 1970 British Grand Prix. This one I've got in, that's Brands Hatch 1970 BOAC 1,000 kilometers, or 500 I think it was then, miles. Chris Amon sideways in the 512S Ferrari that he shared with Arturo Mazzario, I think. And in the background, you can see Pedro in the 917K. Pedro was brilliant that day. But the reason I've got that is because that actually is a card that Michael Turner sent, Michael himself, to Jeffrey Sykes at the Australian Automobile Racing Club that year. And so that's the one Michael chose to send. So I thought, well, that's quite significant, isn't it? And he was more than just an artist. And Bruce McLaren really respected Michael. And when Bruce started his his race team, in back end of '63 for the '64 Tasman series and onward going from there, he commissioned Michael to design the first McLaren logo. You've probably seen that. I think it's lovely with its simplicity, its charm. It says everything, the Kiwi, the race car. That red is actually the red that Bruce ran the cars in '67, the Formula One car in '67 and the Can-Am cars '66, '67. Well, '65, '66, '67. And so, yeah, they were originally New Zealand colours when he took the cars out of the Tasman series. But anyway, that maroon was something that he adopted, and I just think it's a lovely logo that Michael Turner designed for Bruce McLaren. And this, this is just, I've just put that up. I saw that passing a shop window at Monaco. Well, obviously when was it? 2016. And it just shows the difference, doesn't it? Because Michael was commissioned to do the front covers of many Grand Prix, and particularly Monaco. Every year did Monaco. And then suddenly, I got to blame Bernie here, it all changed with this sort of robotic AI type cover thing they went to. And if you look at it now, I mean, which picture has the more charm? Which cover for a program has the more charm? Obviously the Michael Turner one, and that's 65. John Surtees in the Ferrari with Jackie Stewart just behind him. And I just think, all those changes they make, are they for the better? Definitely not, because Michael's style was quite detailed, and his son Graham is really good artist as well. So sometimes it's very difficult to tell the two apart. And their aircraft, their battle scenes in terms of air warfare, and their race cars are just absolutely superb. And I remember once talking to Jackie Stewart about Michael Turner, and he was saying that actually it was Michael that told this story, that he did a shot, it was one of the Christmas cards for 73 of Jackie at the Nürburgring airborne in the Tyrrell, and showed it to Jackie and said, what do you think of this, Jackie? Would you like to sign it or whatever? And Jackie said, oh, yeah, it's very nice, but I think the grass on the left should be a little bit longer, Michael. The grass was not quite the right height for Jackie Stewart. That's the attention to detail that Jackie had. B, that was his ability to look at things beyond the Flugplatz or wherever he was, airborne in the Tyrrell at the time. Classic Jackie. And Michael loved all that. Anyway, Michael, we miss you, and God bless. Wonderful contribution to motorsport. And your paintings and prints will live forever, which is a wonderful thing. Before we get on to a chat I had yesterday with Cory Pesaturo, my mate from Rhode Island, America, who's the world champion accordion player, and does a million different renditions of that, whether you want upbeat, downbeat, folk, jazz, whatever. He can do it on his accordion. He's just amazing. He's won 3 world championships, as he says, right there in the center bracket. And but he's also massively into weather and detail weather forecasting and weather analysis of great maps and all that, brilliant. And also very, very good on statistics, and loves being creative with statistics and coming up with ways of comparing drivers through the era. So we're going to have a chat about that. And I should say from the get-go that this is recorded, obviously, and I'm wearing a beanie, to be honest, because it was absolutely freezing. It was like the middle of the night to get Cory at the right time zone. And in my studio here, and I think it was a problem with the heating or something that night, and I was very cold. But anyway, that's why I'm wearing a yellow beanie. Jetcraft, apologies. But anyway, that's recorded. But what I was going to say was, if watching this now, you have questions that you think arise from what Cory's saying, you disagree, agree, whatever, and would like him to go further into a specific area, I'm thinking of, it'll be a different time slot of doing a live stream next week with Cory live. So if you've got questions you want to put to Cory as a result of what you're about to see, then write them down and we can put them into a live stream next week, assuming I can get Cory to agree to do that. I mean, I have to find a time slot that'll work. It'll probably be evening in Europe, so it's morning for him. But he'd love to do that, I think. And it'd be kind of cool to have him live on the show, answering your questions and talking to you about those stats. But anyway, this is a recorded one. Before we get on to that, I just wanted to say one more thing. Big news. Martin Vidaga, who I've interviewed on this channel. We went up to Andorra to interview him at the Two Shots Cafe, where he always hangs out, is the co-driver to Terry Neuville. They're just fresh from winning the Saudi Arabian rally, and of course won the World Championship last year, Rally 1. But I've got that picture there because Martin, unlike any co-driver I can think of, actually loves driving as well, and actually is pretty good. He was very good at Goodwood, and I think on the back of that, he's got a Rally 2 Hyundai i20N and did a rally last weekend in France, and was actually quickest on some of the stages and was really quick, was right up there at the front. He had some issues. He went off at one point, cold tires after they'd spent 10 minutes fixing something, but he was right on the pace. And I think I might talk to him again about that, because I think that's an amazing achievement to do that. For a co-driver to be that good in a car driving it, I think is very impressive. Anyway, no more ado now. Let's get into my chat with Cory and watch it all the way through, because towards the end we get away a little bit from stats, and I talked to him a bit about Mario, the Cadillac Formula One team, and a few other things besides. And the whole interview is about, I don't know, 20 minutes or something like that. So enjoy, and I'll be back when it's all over. Cory, it's good to see you, and an appropriate moment, I think, at the end of the year now. We know what the tabulated results are in terms of the championship, but your system definitely is something we need to hone in on now. And I noticed straight away that you've now got Max in the statistics in season with a car capable of winning races, but not the championship. That's probably, the McLaren guys would probably disagree with that on the basis that he did make it through to the last round, but you're pretty categorical about that?
Yeah, I mean, he had no business coming close to it, especially when he didn't even have a teammate. I mean, he was doing this all alone against a totally dominant team that should have walked away with the championship. And the two drivers he's fighting with in the better team are fighting each other until the last race. That's how dominant their car was, and Verstappen was still there. So, yes, McLaren drivers that look at these statistics would say, no, Cory, that he should be in that category higher. His stat shouldn't be in this season's not capable of winning the championship. But it's true. He shouldn't have had any chance. Really, in this bottom category, it's Senna and it's Verstappen. Those are the two best. Now, Jim Clark doesn't have really seasons in this, but that's the problem with not many races back in the old days. It's hard to do some of these categories. But certainly, yeah, in a car that's pretty good, can win races, probably not win the championship. You know, most people always think, me included, that that's what Senna was a legend for. And the statistics bear that out. But Verstappen, in this first category, is already pretty much right there with Senna. Winning percentages basically the same. He's the best all time in a podium, which we see. Verstappen seems to be always on the podium, no matter what season it is. Poles he's behind. Senna, we all know, is the best at that, but fastest laps is the same. So he's right there. Hamilton kind of fails in this category, as you can see. So now, if you go into that next category, seasons with arguably the best car, certainly capable of winning races and championships, but not a totally dominant car. So for Verstappen, this is 2021, 2022, and 2024. Of course, that 2023 car, that's in the top category of totally dominant car. But in this category, if you look at Verstappen, he's got of the best stats with Fangio. It's kind of, so now in this category, he's with Fangio and you could say Jim Clark too. Those are really the three best. And we have a lot of data in this category for all drivers, so you get a good idea. So when you're separating these, yeah, you can start comparing Verstappen in this category to Jim Clark and Manuel Fangio. And once again, for Hamilton fans, not a great category again for him here.
I don't see any Lando Norris in any of these at the moment.
No, well, we're just looking at the greatest of all time. I don't think Lando gets a sniff at some of the greatest drivers of all time yet. Now, let's wait another 3-4 years, but right now, I don't think we have to do his data yet.
Yeah, well, and just to repeat, I mean, the great thing about all these stats is how you are embracing all the eras, and it's such a difficult thing to do given the changes in the point system, given the number of races per year then compared with now. And obviously there's a safety factor, a reliability factor, and you're kind of computing all of that in, right? And when we're looking at these statistics,
yeah,
and make it an even playing field.
And of course, with my data, I'm always trying to take out bad luck anywhere where I can. And for Lando and McLaren fans, this is something you can feel comfortable about, and Max fans can feel comfortable about. In my data, Lando this year won by 2 weekends worth of points. So he should have won the title. In the same way that in 2008, Hamilton did win the title, even in my data too. So where Hamilton, I always talk about this, where Hamilton fans should be angry is not at 2021. Max easily won the title in 2021. 2016 is close. I still have Rosberg, but in 2007 is the championship where Lewis Hamilton fans should be furious. That's the one he really should have won. Which I even have here with 2007 title.
And
But a lot of that.
just to be clear about what you mean by luck, do you call Lando's retirement in Zandvoort bad luck? Is that what you're
Yes,
talking about there?
he should have finished second in that race, and he does in my data.
And is that what makes you say he should have won it by 2 weekends?
Yeah, he not to go into how I do it, but it's basically 2 weekends worth of points. So it really wasn't that close. And actually, even Piastri got second. So it's funny how many times in seasons where you think, oh, the other person should have won, even the way I do it, it usually ends up coming out the way it did in real life, which is kind of neat. But another example for Senna fans, in my data, he wins Monaco 1984 because Prost is whining, oh no, shut down the race, it's too dangerous. Senna was going to win that another lap or two. So, so there's another one. On section 1, seasons in a totally dominant car. This is where Lewis Hamilton fans really have to pay attention because you notice everyone has 2 or 1 seasons in a totally dominant car. Hamilton has had 5. So when you look at, well, he has 100 wins, 100 poles, 200 podiums, 7+ championships. You could say he won 10 championships. Okay. He's had far more seasons and far more races in a totally dominant car. So now when you break this down into the percentages of races that all these guys have had in dominant cars, you see who comes out on top is once again Jim Clark, Alberto Ascari, and Max Verstappen are the 3 best in this category. And people forget Ascari too much. In the 14 races, he had a totally dominant car. He won 12 of them. He had 8 hat tricks, 6 Grand Slams, and 3 what I call perfect races, where you get pole, fastest lap, win, and win by 2 minutes or more. And he had 3 of those in those 14 races. I mean, he was so dominant in 52 and 53. But yeah, Clark, Ascari, and Verstappen are tops here, which means, Peter, that Verstappen is of the best in all 3 categories. He's certainly of the best in all 3.
Yeah.
And we don't have enough data for Clark in that bottom category, but it's just by looking at this overall at 36,000 feet, you go, wow, he is absolutely in the discussion with the Fangios, the Sennas, the Ascaris already. If he quit tomorrow, he's already right there just by what he's done in his career. And I have that little spot at the bottom of the top category for people that don't like Max and say, oh, well, how could you put his 2022 stats in that middle category? That was a totally dominant car. Well, even if you do, it still comes out pretty much almost as good anyway. I don't think the 2022 car was totally dominant. Leclerc, who's certainly not the driver Max is, had, I think, more poles than Max in 2022. So the Ferrari was quite fast. He just kind of failed. In the same way Vettel failed in 2018 when he had the car to compete with Hamilton. He failed as a driver. Yeah. So either way, you thought Max is right there.
Just going back to Ascari, the one thing we need to think about there, thinking about 52, 53, is the quality of the opposition. I know having a totally dominant car is one way of describing it, but sometimes it's because the opposition is absolutely mediocre, and therefore he's always going to win, even in a average car almost. And that was kind of the case in 52, 53, because it was a weird thing where Formula One went to the Formula 2 regulations at the encouragement of Enzo Ferrari, who just happened to have a really quick Formula 2 car at the time and nobody else did. That Ferrari in 52, 53 was more than totally dominant. It was the only car in effect. I'm not trying to decry the achievement of Alberto Ascari, and we should always remember that Dennis Jenkinson, the doyen of all motoring journalists, once said that in his opinion, Ascari was quicker than Fangio. So we shouldn't forget that. But it's an important point, I think, to remember that the opposition for Ascari in 52, 53 was almost negligible.
And Fangio went away from the sport and then came back. And then when he came back, he was dominant. And nobody can forget, really Fangio, he wins the 1950 title in my stats. So in the 7 seasons Fangio competed, he won 6 titles, which is, and with 4 different teams. So if anybody wants to say Fangio is the greatest of all time, I am not going to argue that because there's enough there. His percentages of wins, percentages of podiums, percentages of poles blows everybody away. And he started, of course, when he was older. So yeah, it's hard to completely pick because you're going across eras, but you're trying to figure out why do I feel with the eye test? To me, that's the definition of sports. It's the battle between the statistics and the eye test. Why is it when everyone saw Senna, they're like, I don't care about the stats. This guy is all-time special. Why do people today look at Verstappen and say, even years ago. I thought in 2015 in his rookie season, I said, this guy is one of the greatest of all time. That was 10 years ago. You can just see it. And the statistics overall, they also bear that out if you go into detail. But that's kind of the fun, the eye test versus the statistics. The fun one for me and you is always Jim Clark. His statistics are kind of blah.
Well, that's why I love doing these, because Jim Clark looks so good in all your stats, Cory. But one thing I would question maybe is Michael. I'm intrigued as to why you only have Michael with 2 years with the most dominant car, because he was effectively exclusively on Bridgestones at Ferrari from 2001 onwards, which gave him a massive advantage. He engineered it himself with Ross Brawn, but I'm surprised you only have 2 years there where he had the dominant car, totally dominant car.
Well, the only one you could say would be dominant would be 2001, but even that went to the end of the season. I mean, in 2002 and 2004, I mean, every weekend it was pretty much, okay, is it going to be Schumacher and Barrichello winning by 30 seconds or Schumacher and Barrichello winning by a minute? 01 wasn't like that. 03 went right down to the end, of course.
Let's just talk about Jim Clark then versus Max Verstappen. Over these 3 different categories, who is ahead at the moment?
Well, the thing about, I mean, you can speak to this far more than I can because you know the era better. But the thing for Verstappen fans, if they want to see, is there a path for him to become the greatest of all time? To me, the greatest driver of all time was Jim Clark. The greatest racer of all time is Ayrton Senna. I kind of separate them because in terms of passing, blocking, aggressiveness, you're in 20th place. You have 20 laps to get to first. Who do you put your life in? I'm giving it to Senna, not Clark. But if you have an hour and a half, 2-hour race or longer, a Le Mans race, I'd rather have Jim Clark. You know, they're kind of different drivers in what their top skill is. The thing with Max is he started off as a Senna, very aggressive, best passer, best blocker, pissing everyone off at how aggressive he was. Now in the past 5 years, 2021 on, we've seen him become incredible at tire management and being smooth and having Jim Clark and Prost qualities. So it's like he's kind of gone this path now where he has both Senna's skill set and starting to have Clark's skill set. Where, to me, those are probably the 2 best drivers we've ever seen. Again, driver, racer. And he kind of has qualities of both. And you see it when it's needed. When he starts in 15th place, you see the Senna come up. When he's starting, like in the last race, Abu Dhabi, he's like, oh, let me just drive as slow as I can and still win the race. Or tire management, 2021 U.S. Grand Prix, where he held off Hamilton coming on the new tires. He has both those qualities, and that's incredible to see.
Yeah, it is. And I would add one of those as well. I think the Max that a lot of people saw at the beginning of his career would assume that if he was in a difficult situation starting from the back of the grid, mid-pack for whatever reason, he would be the guy that would sort of aggressively charge through at the first corner and inevitably damage a front wing end plate or take somebody out or get involved in somebody's accident. And yet, time and again now, recently, we've seen Max starting in those vulnerable positions, Austria aside, and getting away with it and actually doing an incredibly good job and picking up places on that first corner, which is such a vulnerable, fragile part of the race. Yeah, of course, Austria was different, but that really wasn't his fault, other than that he shouldn't have been in that part of the grid at all. He didn't belong there. And if you are qualifying there, even if you're being super careful, how can you stop somebody T-boning you the way Kimi did?
And don't forget, in the 2022, you had that 4-race stretch where he started the Hungarian Grand Prix in 10th, won the race. Started the Spa in 13th, won the race. That was where Alonso said, I'll have the lead by lap 11, and I think he did by 12. The Dutch Grand Prix, which he started on pole and won, and then the next race he started 7th Italian Grand Prix and won the race. 4 races in a row, where 3 of them he comes from further back and gets the lead with no problems, no issues, no crashes. And this is even as a Senna fan. I have to admit, when you really study his career, he did make a lot of mistakes. And Max only made a lot of mistakes, some in the beginning. We haven't seen that. He's just fine-tuned it.
Yeah. Just going back to Senna versus Clark and their racecraft. Yeah, I'm not sure you're right there, Cory, because think about the twice at the German Grand Prix at the Nürburgring, Jimmy had problems on the line and had to side through the field and did so without any problem at all, and within 2 laps was always at the front of the race. The other point is the Italian Grand Prix, 67. If you want to see Jim Clark, the racer, think about him leading that race in the Lotus 49, getting a puncture, losing a lap,
coming all the way back,
and then coming all the way back to lead the race again, and then run out of fuel because he had been therefore using more fuel in order to drive like that, and ran out of fuel on the penultimate lap. I mean, Jimmy, yeah, he was a racer right up there with Senna, in my opinion. I just had to say that. You probably predicted that I would say that.
I mean, you know, obviously, everybody we're talking about is of the highest level. I'm saying if you nitpick the highest level.
Yeah.
But certainly statistically, Jim Clark, no matter what I do, no matter what systems I try, he just always seems to come out on top. And this is what younger and new fans that just look at the statistics. Oh, Hamilton. I mean, Hamilton does have the most perfect career, I think, in sports history. 100 poles, 100 wins, 200 podiums, 7+ championships. I mean, it's perfect.
It's almost as if you're saying he should stop there and draw a line, right?
I know, but there's more to it. He's had far more races in a totally dominant car than anybody in history. And he's had 5 seasons with a car that he couldn't lose the championship, and he still lost in 2016 to Rosberg, although, yes, Malaysian Grand Prix, his engine blows. But overall that season, Rosberg's good. He's not amazing. He's not Prost. You know, it's not like he had to fight some legendary driver to win that title. No.
It's interesting. Jackie Stewart doesn't appear in any of those stats, does he? Because I would say, I mean, I know it's just one, but I would say his championship win in 73 was definitely not in a championship winning car. And that was a great championship win for Jackie. And then, of course, the other thing, like Jimmy and all these other drivers, you got to remember how few races they actually started compared with, say, Lewis. You know, how many races has Lewis started now? It's unbelievable.
Yeah, 350, I think.
Jackie did 99, Jimmy 62 or 63, I think. I mean, right. Fangio less than that. You know, that's a stat too that I think you've computed into these numbers, correct?
Well, it's a positive and a negative. It's a positive. Look at all the wins I've got. But remember, the more races you race, the more it hurts your percentages and stuff. I mean, you can see this with Hamilton, how many races he's had, and now he keeps racing. And this year, you know, it would have been great if he pulled off a win and a couple of podiums. He pulls off nothing, and Leclerc gets, 7 podiums this year or something? And it looks really bad. And Hamilton just doesn't fare well in any of these categories.
Yeah, but there's a subtle factor there, which is not necessarily the number of races you do. It's the number of races in a season, another opportunity, the opportunities you have therefore to score. Fangio, Clark, Stewart, all those drivers had much fewer opportunities to do well. If you also throw in how dangerous it was as well, which is another factor. And so that actually colors everything very differently as well. If you put in the danger and you put in drivers like Lewis, let's not say Max at the moment, but Lewis, Prost, onto circuits of the type that Fangio, Ascari, Jim Clark raced on, and would they have been the same race drivers anyway?
I mean, when you think you could die at every corner because of cow or fence or something.
Yeah, and sadly, it's no joking matter. I mean, Fangio, when you think about how upset he was when Onofre Marimar, who was a protege of his, was killed in practice at the Nürburgring at the German Grand Prix, you know, that how many drivers today have to go through that sort of thing? And that was just a relatively small thing, really, because it didn't actually involve Fangio. But that happened all the time. It happened so regularly, and that had to be a factor as well. And how they actually drove the cars in order not to have accidents as well, and the very fine edge they had to find. Do we see Mario in there?
No, I mean, there's not enough stats, but I mean, Mario's certainly in my top 10 drivers of all time because of the versatility. I mean, nobody has ever been so versatile and quick so fast. It's like every first time he was in something, his first qualifying in Indy 500, his first qualifying in Formula One. Nobody's ever done better the first time they step into a new car. Pike's Peak winner. I mean, it's crazy what Mario's career is. AJ Foyt too, pretty
well, and I would say Dan Gurney too.
And Dan Gerry. And Dan, Mark Donoghue.
Yeah, Dan's super quick in Formula One from his first race and in everything else he ever did. He won Le Mans, you know, obviously won a million Riversides in all sorts of cars. great sports car driver, IndyCar, won the Indy 500 as a team owner and an engineer, second as a driver. It's just, and basically began the rear engine revolution at Indy. So Dan Gurney, in terms of his contribution, is somewhere near Mario, really, in terms of his greatness, I think, as a driver. But here we are, two guys talking about motor racing drivers, and there's so many we could bring in. I mean, John Surtees, if you want to bring in a factor there, is how many motorcycle world championships have you also won on the way to winning the Grand Prix World Championship? Surtees is out there on his own, is he not?
I mean, people cannot forget that achievement. And I thought Valentino Rossi was going to have a chance to do it. They was going to stop MotoGP in 2010, 2011, and come into Formula One and see what he could do there. It just never transpired. But he had, that special, he's got that really special ability. And watching his career was just as amazing as watching Michael Jordan's or Tom Brady's. But I think, getting back to the versatility, for me, for Verstappen to get into this most top tier of drivers of all time, he's got to do other things. He doesn't have to do anything more in Formula One. He could retire from it now. He's done well more than enough to show what he can do. Now, go into Le Mans, win your first time, go into the Endurance Championship, come to IndyCar for a year and wipe the field. Do some other stuff and show that no matter what you go in, you are the best driver, like Mario did and other drivers did. And he will. From everything I know of him, talking to him, he wants to do other stuff. So hopefully we will see. And whatever he goes in, it will blow up that sport. People will start watching like never before.
Yeah. And we shouldn't forget, Cory, that he's the only Formula One driver this year that won a race in a Ferrari.
Yeah, you're right.
On the world's greatest circuit. I mean, and if you want your versatility, there's your first taster of it. I mean, talk about getting it all right and then doing a perfect job as a racing driver in that Ferrari around the Nürburgring. Just brilliant.
He really does only care about racing. I mean, the guy does not care about the media interviews and showing up in Chanel outfits. All he cares about is, he's just like Mario Andretti. Mario only cares about driving. He doesn't care about the business, doesn't care about, we're going to have a big ball gal. He just wants to race. And Max is very similar. Where can I race next? He's always doing sim racing. The sim racers say he's the best sim driver in the world, which is crazy to be both because they have slightly different skill sets.
Yeah.
So he is going to just keep driving everything he can, which is awesome. We have many more years of him in his prime to see what he's going to do. But he really is the same person as when I first met him. He's totally down to earth. He's a chill guy. People say, it's an act that he said, I'm not worried about the championship and I'm not disappointed. No, that is him. That truly is who he is. He's already done everything he could possibly imagine. He's that chill. That's actually who he is as a person.
Cory, you're very close to Helmut Marko, and you've done a lot of events with Helmut, wearing your musician's hat. And you got to say here, you are the world champion accordion player. How many championships now have you won? As many as Max?
I retired after 3.
Well, that's pretty good. Pretty good. Nelson Piquet-ish there, very good.
Yeah, I got to my center, so I was good.
Yeah, good. What do you think about Helmut leaving Red Bull now? What's that all about?
Yeah, I have not messaged him because he's probably quite angry at this point. So I'll wait to figure out what's going on there. I don't really know. I can't really comment on that. I just saw that he's out and everybody's texting me. Helmut's out. Like, what? Helmut's out. But just think, that team is totally different. Adrian Newey's gone. Christian Horner's gone. Helmut's gone. Like, wow.
Jonathan Wheatley.
Oh my God! How could I forget Jonathan Wheatley, who's just crushing it with the kick team next year? Yeah. He's amazing. Jonathan really is so important, and not enough people give him credit.
I've got a suspicion, I said this on the live stream, that Max and Helmut will still keep messaging one another, and there'll be communication going on. They're pretty close, pretty tight.
They are.
Yeah. Cory, one final question to you as an American, and I know you're a Mario fan as well, and this is under the heading of, we're not quite sure these days about how much Andretti there is in the new Cadillac Formula One team and how much DNA is there, but let's assume there is some. And under the heading also of Mario being a racer, who just wants to get on a race, what do you think he thinks about Cadillac doing a livery launch before the car's even turned a wheel at the Super Bowl?
Not a fan. He made it happen, remember, Peter. He went to Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C. and got senators and congressmen involved to get this to happen because Formula One was like, no, we don't want another team. And he really spearheaded the whole thing. And, Cadillac is kind of still taking this as a big business situation versus you have the greatest most famous, most revered driver in American history, the perfect American dream story, who's still totally with it, still can drive, still can knows how to set up a car, and his name is the all-time name of American racing, and he's just kind of, he's a side piece here. It's just
Yeah,
devastating.
I don't think they would have consulted Mario on that one. Do you think it's a good idea, Mario, to do a really big deal at the Super Bowl before you even run the car? I think he would have said no. Start quiet, start in the right way, and then we'll do the Super Bowl in 2028, 29,
He
whatever.
would have said, "Can we set up the stagger first? I'm good at
Yeah,
that.
exactly that. Exactly. I mean, and you're absolutely right. There's no way this team would be happening without Mario. I mean, if you want to go right back to the beginning, if he wasn't Mario Andretti, racing driver, being the guy he was, the family man that he was, the way he encouraged Jeff and Michael, and none of this would be happening. It's all about Mario, this team, in my view. And I hope, as you say, I hope Cadillac eventually realize that. And we do see that. And I hope it comes over as the Andretti team. But then there's still that very weird comment that we had from Formula One when they rejected the entry, and they said that we got the feeling that Andretti needs Formula One more than Formula One needs
I
Andretti. And I think
cannot
that is
believe that
something that
happened.
I'll never, ever forgive Formula One
No,
for saying.
I still can't believe that was an actual statement uttered by a human being. I
Yeah,
cannot
yeah,
believe that.
yeah. It's
And
ridiculous.
Andretti needs it's unreal.
Anyway,
Especially,
we'll see how they go. Cory, as ever, wonderful talking to you. Have a great holiday season in Rhode Island, where you're based.
yes, yeah, very good.
What's it like there now,
Very
weather-wise? And
seasonable. Not
yeah.
not enough snow yet. It's been as cold as ever, but just the hasn't storms haven't happened. I'm a big snow fan. I do a lot of snow stuff. I have too many hobbies, Peter. Weather. I do a lot of weather stuff. I do free sledding. The accordion's a career. The Formula One is a hobby. It's too many things. But
Well, congrats again on your career with the accordion. I'd invite you to play something live, but I know there'll be a million issues with rights because you're such a high-powered musician these days. We don't go down there. But I hope you make it over to the Poconos to do some snowmobiling with Mario. And if you
yeah,
do, try and keep him below 150 miles an hour over the frozen lake, will you? Because, he is getting on a little bit.
yeah, he is, but he's still strong. I mean,
Of course he is.
you can punch his stomach and it's hitting a rock wall. It's
Yeah, I
unbelievable.
know. What a star that guy is. I must give him a ring. Cory, thanks so much, buddy. Take care.
Very good.
Looking at those pictures of Fangio, that picture of him in the Alpha is early picture. It's got to be 50-51. Beautiful overalls, just a Pirelli Alfa Romeo there. Just simplicity, but really nice. That was from Pirelli, actually, that photograph from their archive. And yeah, Mario, just what a star he is. I hope, I really hope, as I was saying with Cory, I really hope, and he was saying too, that Cadillac really use Mario in the right way, and we can benefit as a sport from everything Mario Andretti's done and contributed to motorsport, and particularly Formula One, obviously. And there's not too much sort of Cadillac modern stuff, and there's a lot of Mario in there. I really hope that's the way the team is. Whether it's going to be that way, I don't know. We'll have to wait and see, I guess. But it's a funny thing, isn't it? That whole business of the Super Bowl and doing all that before they can even trot, let alone run as a team. Anyway, it's their style. Let's see what happens. I had one other thing I mentioned yesterday, and talking of Canadians with Gilles and obviously Gerry Donaldson. I mentioned yesterday in the live stream last week the Ken Reid book. I thought I'd just mention that. It's called White Circus. Really good book. Downhill skier extraordinaire, really nice guy too, and a lovely book. Really enjoyed that. Just apropos nothing at all. So yeah, let's get on with some questions, because that's what this is all about. It's all about you and your show. But just as a reminder, if you want to ask questions of Cory, we'll try and get him in. I'll confirm that he's going to be a live guest next week, and we can get some questions to him based on what we were chatting about there. Obviously, he's got his own way of doing it. Everybody has their own systems if they want to create them. And the World Championship, of course, is the World Championship. But you saw in that picture there of John Surtees and Fangio, Sterling Moss in the middle. And for me, Sterling is still one of the greatest racing drivers of all time. No question about that in my mind. But he never won a world championship. So what does that tell you about the point scoring system? Not a lot, really, does it? Okay, let's go to the questions now. First one is from Emerald Isle, which I guess means island. Gerald Donaldson, RIP. How nice. How nice of you to say that. Thank you very much. And I can't do Gerry justice, because he was an icon as a writer. much better than I could ever dream to be, but a wonderful person too, and that's, you know, that says much of it, I think. Right, next question. User. I'll just say user. Hi, Peter. Do you think Christian Horner's Red Bull would have taken more measures during the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix to help Max win the title? They didn't implement the second team drivers, for example. Well, they tried with Yuki, didn't they? They tried to get Yuki to do something, but he was useless and had no concept of actually how to hold anybody up in the way Sergio Perez did quite effectively in 21 against Lewis. And so, you know, you get what you pay for, really. I mean, Yuki was never going to be up for a task as complicated as that. And it is complicated in the modern world of you're not allowed to impede and GPS and all that stuff. But you can still make it difficult if you use your brain. But, you know, Yuki just did it under braking, which is the most ridiculous thing to do, and was weaving as well. So that was that. I'm not sure what else. I mean, are you suggesting that maybe they should have put somebody super quick in the other car? I don't think that would have worked. And I don't think that would have been, this would never have done. I don't think Christian would have done any differently. Whether he would have run Yuki right through to the end, probably would have, because I guess there's quite a lot of Honda money coming with him. So I don't think Christian would have made any difference to what they did. I think it would have been the same Abu Dhabi Grand Prix with Christian there, is my feeling. Jez James. Hi, Peter. I get the impression you're not keen on having a world championship. I think having a championship can show not always who's the best driver, but shows who's the most consistent. Yeah, well, I don't know. I love golf, I love tennis. I can't say I'm massively into football, I'm not. But I survive as a fan of golf and tennis without having to worry about who's the world champion golfer at the end of the year or who's the world champion tennis player. I just think who won Wimbledon, who won the US Open, who won the French Open, who won the Masters, who won this or that. And that's the alternative. And it'll never change in Formula One now. We've gone so far down the route of having this sort of traveling circus that is the world championship, begins at the beginning of the year, ends at the end, the world champion. And there's nothing wrong with that. And I actually, you know, I think it's an amazing achievement that Formula One have created that. And it goes back, of course, to 1950. But I don't think we should forget that it is about winning races too. And I always try to keep the aforementioned Sterling Moss in mind whenever I'm talking about the World Championship. And I think we should. Just as I always keep Chris Amon in mind when I think of Grand Prix winners. I mean, Chris never won a Grand Prix, but he's one of the fastest drivers ever to sit in a racing car. And there are plenty of others who fill that category as well, fall into that category. And so that's all I'm saying. You know, we shouldn't be too obsessed with this whole World Championship thing, because sometimes it doesn't generate the best racing. People drive around just scoring points and looking for a finish. And I think it's a bit sad when midfield teams say, you know, we're aiming for points finish tomorrow. And, you know, everybody's out there trying to win the race. That's what it's all about. Go racing. And there's too much emphasis on podium finishes and points and all this stuff. And, yeah, it's all a bit crass to me, to be honest. Maybe, I don't know. Call me from another era, maybe, but I don't think I am. I know quite a lot of people who think the same way today. And, you know, it's kind of a shame when racing is compromised by the great God, the World Championship. Having said all of that, the second part of your question is, does it also reward consistency? Of course it does. And I was talking there with Cory, you know, about how Max has improved markedly in his ability in first corners, avoiding accidents. He's really good at avoiding accidents. And maybe if we didn't have a World Championship, he wouldn't be as good at avoiding accidents as he is. So there's a good example. So it's 6 of one, half a dozen the other for me, really. I mean, I think the World Championship is good. It's good commercially. It's good from a point of view of Formula One's visibility, and the honor of being world champion is a great thing. But we should never get so carried away with it that we forget those who are just as good who didn't win world championships because they weren't in the right car at the right time or something else happened. That's all, really. That's my feeling about it. Jez James again. Do you think it's time to put your Daniel Ricciardo staying at McLaren theory to bed now that McLaren won both titles with both their drivers seemingly still in good spirits, or have I missed something? Not really, no. I think I was only looking at, you know, a picture of Daniel and Lando the other day, just both of them having a laugh. And the point is, they still would have won the World Championship with Daniel there. So I don't see that that's an argument. All I'm saying is it would have been much easier, much more simple to do what they wanted to do if they'd kept it at Ricciardo Norris. And they still would have won the Manufacturers' Championship. Lando still would have won the Drivers' Championship, but it would have been a much easier path. They took a different road to make it a lot more difficult. And there was acrimony. You can't say they're all big mates. I mean, if you talk to Oscar Piastri now about Turn 1 Singapore, I'm sure he's not going to say, oh yeah, I've completely forgiven Lando for that. I totally get it now, what he was trying to do, and I was a bit of a prat to get upset about it. I'm sure he's not saying that at all. And believe me, it'll still continue next year. If they've got a race-winning, championship-winning car next year, it'll be the same fur flying. And all I'm saying is, if you're running a team and you've got a great car, you want to keep things as calm as possible. That's, you want to keep it at the Nigel Mansell, Riccardo Patrese level, or the Michael Schumacher, Rubens Barrichello level. And they didn't. They had a perfect guy alongside Lando, and he was called Daniel Ricciardo. And nobody speaks about him anymore. But believe me, they still would have won both championships. No problem at all. Max 303. Hi Peter, do you remember anything of Tom Price, who was sadly killed in 77 from his hometown in North Wales, Denbigh? I've never been to his hometown, but I should go, shouldn't I? Yeah, I remember a lot about Tom, and I first met him in 72, 73. Certainly when he was winning races in the Royale Formula 3 car, which was like a prototype side radiator thing, really nice car. I got to know him very well then, and he was living in a little house just on the main road by Brands Hatch at that time, and I wrote a few articles about him, and I like to say we became good friends, and we would always have a chat whenever I bumped into him at a racetrack or a paddock area or whatever. I was in awe of his ability, his talent, his ability to hold a car at sort of 40 degrees slide every corner, and just a wonderful guy, softly spoken, quiet. He and Nella were a great pair, and yeah, he was one of my friends. What can I say? Same age. It was my era, and at that age, and I just got on with him so well. Totally unaffected. Ambitious, obviously, knew that he was destined to drive a Grand Prix car and would win Grand Prix. You had that feeling about Tom, but not in an arrogant way. He was super, super quick. I mean, he and Jean-Pierre Jabouille, when Jean-Pierre was on, he's really on it. I suppose they're pretty similar, but generally Tom was quicker, I would say, just a little bit. I'd say Tom Price versus James Hunt, different sorts of drivers, but absolutely Tom had the ability to win the World Championship. No question about that. And yeah, one of the saddest days of my life when that accident occurred. I was there at Kyalami. I was actually at the far end of the circuit, the other end down at Leerkop, doing my lap chart throughout the race. And it was only when, well, as far as I could see, Tom had just gone missing from the lap chart, and I got back to the pits. And I remember bumping into Alan Henry, who also knew Tom and Nella very well. And he was almost in tears. And I said, Alan, what's happened? And he said, you haven't heard about Tom? And he explained what happened, and I was absolutely, horrified and very sad. And the worst moment, actually, of all that was flying back that night. I think it was that night, or maybe Monday night. I can't remember. But anyway, we were in a South African Airways 747, bit sort of, been a bit of mileage on it, a bit of road dust on that one, and we took off into this thunderstorm, and the thing was jumping all over the sky, and Nella was 2 rows in front of me, inconsolable, and Tom was in the hold. It was just the most terrible thing, and I was freezing cold, I remember, as well, on that occasion. I don't know why, there's some of the air vent things going on. Just a terrible thing. And I went to his funeral, which was very near Brands Hatch, in a little village there. Lovely. It was quite a nice day. James was there wearing a dark suit, no tie, but a suit, and was very good, very, very poised. And it was, again, I remember the opening hymn was Morning Has Broken. It was just, yeah, difficult to even talk about it now, actually. Just a wonderful guy, but thanks for the question. Super chat here. This is from Ghost Driver. Hi, Ghost Driver 87. Hi, Peter. Love the channel. Thank you so very much. Thank you. what are your reflections on Helmut's career, his recent interview about Christian's issues and his legacy as a talent scout? Is he the best ever? Well, as a career, I would say very, very good racing driver who never really got to show his true talent. Very fast. We saw it in 2-litre sports cars. He was right up there with Nicky, if not slightly ahead of Nicky, I think. We saw it at big sports cars. He won Le Mans, of course, with Gijs van Lennep in a 917 and Martini car. And he was quick in the BRM. He was very quick. And he could easily have won Grand Prix. And like all these people who can win Grand Prix, in the right situation, he could have won a world championship. He was very good. I mean, he and Nicky were sort of sparring partners from quite early on. And I slightly gravitated towards Nicky, I think. I just kind of liked the way Nicky was, and Helmut to me seemed a bit austere. And I think that showed through later on in the way he ran his the academy for Red Bull. He was a bit of a sort of, an ogre, wasn't he? I mean, if you were a young driver, I don't think there was much sympathy if you didn't have a good day. And there's quite a lot of shouting and screaming down the telephone. And I think a lot of it was, this is the Red Bull thing. If you want to be part of us, do it this way, do it that way, be with this team. You get your father to spend this money. A lot of all that. And I never respected Helmut's decision not to use driver coaches like Rob Wilson to train these young guys. And too many of them fell by the wayside because they didn't hone their techniques under pressure, which Rob could have helped them with. Not only Rob, but others as well. And he never did that. He just shouted and screamed and said, you must do better. And so as a driver academy thing, I don't respect him very much at all. No, obviously Vettel and Max stand out, but how many did they go through to get to Vettel and Max? I mean, the money they spent just on Scott's speed alone was ridiculous. And so it goes on even today. So yeah, I'd never had any respect for him on that side. I had respect for Red Bull and the money they poured into it, that's for sure. And I have nothing but respect for Red Bull and what they've done. But I think it could have been a lot more efficient as a driver academy had they done a much better job with the coaching and not been so mercenary about it. Helmut, what can you say? I mean, I can't say anything else really. He's not the easiest of people to get to know. Cory, who we were chatting to earlier, knows Helmut better than I. In fact, I introduced him to Helmut, and the reason they get on well is because Helmut actually loves Cory's music and invites him to quite a lot of events to play, and so they've become very good friends like that. And so there we go. Thank you for that. Anyway. Richard Freeman says, morning Peter, I was at the other end of Kent circuit of Liddon Hill in October, only to find that James Hunt in Formula Ford 1600 had his first wins there in 68, 69. I don't suppose you've been there. Yes, I've actually raced there. Indeed, I finished third there in a Formula V race at Liddon Hill. But yeah, no, I mean, that's completely irrelevant. Liddon's always been on the horizon, and there've been some very good races there, and Formula Ford, Formula 3 sometimes, obviously Rallycross. And that was going to be, at one point, Ron Dennis was going to set up a completely new R&D centre at Liddon as well. Never happened. Lid, I think it was. So, yeah, but no, a lot of time for Liddon Hill. Good little circuit, actually. Great circuit. I had that Formula V race I did was just brilliant. Loved it. Richard Freeman, season's greetings, best wishes. Thank you very much. Same to you. Sarosh Soman, Peter, how did McLaren become so dominant from 88 to 91? I think Williams were close in 86 and 87, and then McLaren just took off from 88 onwards. Well, the big thing was Honda, actually, to be blunt about it. Williams would have won the World Championship, I think, in 88. Had they kept the Honda engine, they would have won it with Nigel. But they let the Honda engine go at the back end of 87. They took the decision at Monaco 87, really. When Honda said to Frank Williams, we want to continue with you, but we want Satoru Nakajima in one car from 88 onwards. In other words, a Japanese Honda driver, and the Williams driver in the other car. And at Monaco 87, Nigel was at that point on a 2-year contract, and Nelson Piquet's contract expired at the end of 87. And so Frank immediately thought, well, that'll be Mansell Nakajima. Don't want that. If it was Piquet Nakajima, Piquet's a more likely guy to win a world championship than Nigel, I might accept it, but I don't want Mansell Nakajima. And he rejected the whole thing out of hand. And at that point, really, Williams decided to go to Judd Engines for 88, which immediately took them out of the competitive frame. Big mistake by Frank, I think, because he never rated Nigel highly enough at that point. And had he said, yeah, okay, Mansell Nakajima, I think Nigel would have won the championship in 88. I have no doubt about that, actually. But he didn't, and there was no convincing him. I convinced Frank quite a lot about Nigel to join the team and the way to run Nigel and so forth, but I could never convince him on that point. I think Frank was as incensed by Honda actually telling him who they wanted in the car as well. He didn't want Nakajima in the car, that's for sure. So it was that. And then, of course, they got the Honda engine then at McLaren. And behind the scenes, Ron Dennis had been doing quite a good sell job on Honda and Ayrton, who was at Lotus, to say to Ayrton, look, come to McLaren. We've got the carbon chassis. We got this and that. We got, okay, John Barnard wasn't there, but it was Gordon Murray and Steve Nichols Neil Oatley doing a great job. And basically, Ron used Ayrton to get the Honda engines to McLaren. Persuaded Ayrton to go to McLaren, and then persuaded Honda, obviously, to go with Ayrton. So he then ended up with Honda engines, Ayrton and Alan Prost, and a very good car. And honed by Steve Nichols, Gordon Murray, Neil Oatley, as I say. And it was a very good car. And at the same time, Williams are running Judd engines and active ride in 88, which was hopeless. And then they changed it halfway through the year to passive. And Nigel had that great second place at the British Grand Prix, but it was nothing compared to where McLaren were. It's a great shame because it would have been a fabulous Formula One season, 88. And that continued through, yeah, as you say, to 91. And then Williams came in with the active ride. Working well. Another one from Sarosh. Hi, Peter. Leclerc, in terms of talent, is in the same bracket as Max, but more emotional, makes more mistakes. What kind of advice would you give him that's easy to follow and implement? Well, I don't know him well enough, and I haven't worked with Leclerc ever, so I can't really say exactly. All I can say is, I've had my own experience at working with drivers. Some of whom have been quite emotional, some of whom aren't. Nigel not. He's very, very strong personality. Carlos, quite emotional, actually. Not in the Charles Leclerc sort of way, but in other ways. And I don't know. I just think with Charles, it would be a question of keeping a clear head, of understanding where he is at the moment, not allowing the paparazzi and everybody around him to keep pushing him as to why he's not getting better results, to focus on each day as it comes along and be super professional and resilient. And scientific about it, really. I mean, having a scientific approach as a racing driver is a very, very powerful tool because it stands up well under pressure. Whether it's the lap in your head that you're driving and the way you're going to react if the car does different things unexpectedly, or whether it's withstanding the pressure of doing a Q3 lap with 30 seconds to go as you cross the line. All those things need a structure in order to work, and that's I think probably Charles needs a bit more of a structure in the way he thinks about his racing, not only the lap but also his ability to work with the team and get the best from himself. I'm not talking the sports psychology stuff. I don't believe in all that, to be honest. You probably know that by now. I just think a mental structure, providing you've got the strong fundamentals of the lap and how to drive a car, manipulate a car, which, as you correctly say, Leclerc has. I think then it's just a question of having that as the basic scaffolding structure around which you can then operate. And I don't think he's got that structure quite enough. I don't think it's been tightly enough bolted in. That's the right phraseology. Sarosh again, Peter, I'm leaning more towards not having a championship. Wow, okay, well, you're going to be president of the FIA one day. That's an interesting platform. Good. Maybe award points only to the winner and nothing for the rest. By this way, drivers' teams would be flat out focusing only on the races. Yeah, it's a great idea, and it's not the first person. You're not the first person to have mooted that. Of course, that'll never happen because too many of the teams, the midfield teams, are desperate for money, desperate for this, desperate for that, and they're all they're thinking about is constructors' points because it means money basically in the bank for the team, and so they go on down that path, and sadly it'll never change, But not a bad thing. Lots of points for the winner. Well, that's a good question actually to throw to Cory. Get him to completely redo every World Championship since 1950 to see how it would turn out. Sarosh again. Okay, Sarosh, so we're at 4 now. Good on you. Peter, Prost had 41 fastest laps to Senna's 19, and Senna was double for the poles. Is this a reflection of Prost for the mechanical empathy, focusing on race pace as being the most important? Absolutely. And it's also a reflection of Ayrton just wanting to be on the pole, be the fastest guy out there on a Saturday afternoon at any given racetrack of the world. That's how they were. Ayrton loved ultimate pace and believed that if he could qualify on the pole, he could then just cruise the race whenever he was. And if necessary, obviously race hard. And equally, Prost, I think more, that was a big year for Prost in 84 with Nicky in the other car, fighting for the championship. And he learned a lot from Nicky about how to finish races and how to think of Sunday on a Friday morning. And that was Prost's sort of Nicky version 2, if you like. And that was how Ireland was. Yeah, he wasn't that interested in qualifying, but he focused 100% on the race car. Full tanks, tyre running, time management, all that, all the things we have today. And in a time when the drivers had a little bit more say in the job list for the morning session. So if Alain wanted to go to full tanks, he'd go to full tanks. If Ayrton wanted to focus on the pole lap, he'd go for the pole lap kind of thing. Not to extremes that it would upset the team, but certainly it showed up in the approach and the setup of the cars. And a good balance was Nigel, who always wanted to be on the pole, but always wanted to be super quick in the race as well. Peter, of all the drivers past and present, who would you wish to have as your ambulance driver? Oh, that's a good one. Okay, I got a broken leg, got to get to the hospital as soon as possible. Who would I want to have? Gilles Villeneuve, I think, because Gilles would never stop. If there was a traffic jam, he'd go up the footpath, he'd be over here. So, Gilles, definitely. Jim Honts, 7313. Peter, could you please address the question? It's a little off topic. I've never been to a live rally living in Pennsylvania, USA, but from watching videos, I'm amazed at the lack of crowd control. I see people standing right next to the course, even on the outside of turns. It seems like a disaster waiting to happen. Well, not at WRC World Rally Championship events. They're very, very good on crowd control now. And if there's one spectator roaming where he shouldn't be, they just stop the stage, often cancel a stage. And they're very good. Michel Mouton, former great rally driver, should take a lot of credit for that. She's massively improved the safety standards of rallying. And so that applies to Rally 1, Rally 2, and all the other sort of smaller categories that partake of those WRC weekends. ERC, a little bit less strict, I think. And then a lot of the national rallies, they still have ropes and whistles and guys with whistles and preventing you do this. But if you want to stand in a really dangerous place, you can probably get away with it. And yeah, it's not a good thing. I agree. And so, I just hope nothing happens. That's all I can say. I think we all think the same way, but it's a bit of a worry. But generally speaking, if you have a look at a World Rally Championship event, I think you'll see the spectators in very strong positions, very good, safe positions, relatively safe anyway. Another super chat, I think it is. This is from Ghost Driver again. Thank you very much for this. I thought Cory made an interesting point about the differences between a driver and a racer. Perhaps not apt for Clark and Senna, but how about Lando and Oscar? Yeah. I mean, Cory did. I mean, he's always had this thing about Senna's the ultimate racer, and I had to sort of put him straight on that one. So Jim Clark wasn't bad. Thank you, Cory. But yeah, I think for sure Oscar is a racer, and he likes first corners and he likes getting out there and doing it, which is probably one of the reasons he was so annoyed by what Lando did at Singapore, because they obviously as a team they'd agreed not to do that near one another. And is Lando less of a racer? Yeah, I think he probably is. He's learned how to finish races consistently and bring the car home through P3, P2, P4, and does it well. And so that makes him a little bit less of a racer. So yeah, it's an interesting comparison. Very interesting. And there'll be plenty more we could think of in that way, I think. 01 Drew, it's technically theoretically possible to drive a Formula One car upside down in a tunnel due to the immense downforce Formula One cars generate. They must build a track with a tunnel that they can race upside down on. Well, yeah. Yeah, I'm sure Adrian will be up for that. You know, he expects his drivers to perform on whatever conditions he gives them so that he can get the maximum from the car. Thus, he did that car when he wanted to have a really narrow nose. He did the car, well, it was a theoretical thing, but he did the car where the pedals were on top of one another rather than alongside one another. So you had your feet like that, made an even narrower nose. Never actually got built, as far as I know. Never actually done. But yeah, you can do all sorts of things if you really want it. The problem is, of course, the regulations. And if they don't allow cameras, footwell cameras in there because they don't have enough space for the lighting they would need to make them work, and they're not prepared to put that in the regulations, I doubt they're going to do much in terms of letting the car run upside down or have a super narrow footwell area. Stanley says, please tell me you have Cam as a guest. Oh, well, yeah, we get old Cam on the show for sure. The goatiest of goats, Cam, isn't he? There you go. Yeah, we'll get Cam on. Now I've got this whole live stream thing, bring him on live. Yeah, absolutely. Aaron, hi, Peter and Cory. Some Formula One statisticians try to normalize the performance of the car when comparing drivers throughout history. This unavoidably involves comparing teammates. I'm curious what Cory thinks about Red Bull in 25. Is the skill difference between Max and Yuki Liam really as large as the numbers suggest? Well, yeah, I think he's made that point at the start of the thing, didn't he? He said, you know, Max was out there on his own because basically, do previous methodologies still make sense with such an extreme intra-team result? And I think, you know, I don't think Red Bull thought, oh, we're going to put Yuki in the car now because he's going to be really slow and we'll just leave everything for Max. I think they thought he's going to be quicker than Liam and we're going to get him to score more points and maybe to help Max on occasion. But it never happened, really, did it? So that was Yuki that disappointed them and let them down on that. But as Cory says, you know, that's I think that it was just Max is a reflection on how difficult the Red Bull was compared with the McLaren. It was a difficult car to drive, and only Max could make it work. So there you go. Hi, Peter. Do you have any memories of the 79 French Grand Prix? I was there. It was my first Grand Prix overseas. I have many special memories of the event. That was the Jean-Pierre Jabouille won it, I think, didn't he, in the Renault Turbo. It was the first time Renault had run the smaller Garrett turbochargers, and they really had great throttle response for the first time. And Jean-Pierre did a massive amount of testing beforehand, and they just hit the ground running and just walked away with it. So addled these days with various things going on. Let me just check that before I could talk complete rubbish. I think that's what it was, wasn't it? That race? Dijon? Let me have a look. French GP. I think it was. Yeah, 7 years Formula Dijon, that's right. Jean-Pierre Jabouille. And I was there, yeah. And Gilles, second in the Ferrari, René Arnoux. Of course, that was that mega race, wasn't it? Gilles and René Arnoux. And Arnoux, I remember actually I was in the Renault motorhome after the race, and Arnoux couldn't believe that he'd left the door open, having got past Gilles with all that stuff. He left the door open and Gilles just passed him to finish P2, and he was absolutely astonished that had happened. And I think then that's when they became pretty. I mean, obviously Gilles respected René after that big battle. They were touching wheels at the end of the straight and all the rest of it. But I think he actually felt sorry for René that he'd done that on the last lap. His brain just sort of completely faded, and Gilles just breezed into P2. And so, yeah, it was a great race, great battle between those two. But, you know, people remember it for that. But to me, Jean-Pierre Jabouille was a very underrated racing driver. He was quick. He was a very good engineer. That test session that he did to make that car work was basically a Jean-Pierre Jabouille test session. You know, he basically orchestrated the whole thing and made it happen. And, wow, you know, for a Frenchman to win the French Grand Prix in a French car, it was a big day. A lot of time for Jean-Pierre Jabouille. He, cool guy. Again, you know, fairly softly spoken, even in French. You know, he wasn't massively outward going like, say, Jacques Lafitte. And I remember he was very into Supertramp Used to listen to Supertramp a lot. Breakfast in America. And whenever I hear Supertramp, I always think of Jean-Pierre Jabouille. Great guy. Yeah, so 79 French Grand Prix Dijon. Lovely circuit too. Love Dijon. Lovely part of France. Great time of the year, mid-July. Dijon mustard. Lovely steaks. Very good. Nice race. Nice undulating bits of road. Interceptor. Hi, Peter. We were at the 75 GP when Jody Scheckter won in front of the home crowd in Kyalami. As an 11-year-old, watching my hero win was one of my best memories ever. I was indeed, yeah. 75 Jody in the Tyrrell, and it was a sort of classic Alex Blignort, Ken Tyrrell party afterwards, barbecue, and you just thought, well, you know, Jackie's gone, but now Jody's really up there, showing that he's the next Jackie Stewart in the Tyrrell, and it kind of all faded away when Ferrari. Mauro Foggieri brought that transverse gearbox out on the Ferrari 312, but until then Jody was really good in the Tyrrell, and Kyalami was a great circuit then. Sadly, you know, we talked earlier about the Tom Price accident, but it was a lovely circuit. 75 I remember as being a very neat and tidy race of nothing particularly bad happening, and it was, yeah, we'd lost Peter Revson in 74, hadn't we? And so, yeah, it was a good Ken Tyrrell win. Yeah, Jody Scheckter was he was a strange driver in a way, because he came onto the scene a bit like sort of the Max Verstappen aura of super quick but very risky and causing a few shunts and being a little bit over the top and needing to quieten down a bit. But by 75 he'd done that, and he looked like the real pro who was going to win a world championship at some point. Of course he did in 79. So yeah, good. Louise Coyer. Hi Peter, I don't know much about him, but how was Kimi Räikkönen as a driver? Oh, he was not bad, Kimi Räikkönen. No, he was one of the best of his era. Definitely. I mean, an incredible short corner touch, beautiful feel for the rear of the car. Very rarely overloaded the rears. Very good at driving through understeer. I think he did a better job than Mika Häkkinen, the other Finn at McLaren at the time, or before Kimi, at managing understeer. We've had that discussion with Mark Slade actually. And Kimi at McLaren was super, super good. And then he went off the boil a little bit. He lost a couple of tenths, I think, in terms of lap speed by the time he got to Ferrari. And he won the World Championship there, of course. But I don't think he was quite the same Kimi. And other things were coming into his life. And he wasn't quite as focused as he had been as a young kid. But yeah, one of the best. Very good. And you know, I've talked about quietly spoken people this morning. I mean, Kimi was almost non-existent in terms of, I mean, of course he would talk a lot about racing if you're in a racing environment, but he wasn't outward going in any means and by any means. And he just said what needed to be said, and then just went and did his own thing. And yeah, you know, incredible balance, incredible feel, and always interested in motocross, rallying, sports cars, well beyond Formula One. He didn't have this tunnel Formula One vision. And Mark Arnold, his trainer, was much more than a trainer. He was a very close friend to Kimi, and they went everywhere, inseparable really. And Mark's a great guy as well, still is. They all are. So yeah, amazing. Reggae wise, bless. Oh, thank you very much. Another one, an Aussie flag. Yeah, so much sadness in Australia at the moment with that terrible event on Bondi Beach. It's just, yeah, it's just beyond understanding, really, isn't it? Diego Marina, good day from, actually it doesn't say, I guess Madrid, I would think. Oh, good day from Madrid. There you go. That's, yeah, okay. Another question came between Diego's too. Thank you very much, Diego. Yeah. Max 790. I rewatched Malaysia 99 after you mentioned it. Wow, people forget how brilliant Schumacher was. The art of defense was on full display. I also think that track was brilliant. Yeah, one of the great demonstrations of defense, which, as I say, you know, Red Bull should have watched with Yuki Tsunoda before the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, because you're going to be doing a bit of defense in Abu Dhabi. Yuki, have a look at this. This is how it's done. Did they do that? I doubt it. And And yeah, Sepang, great circuit. Herman Tilke's first circuit, actually. And just a great combination of corners, fast corners, lovely first, second and third corners after the start. Those two parallel straights, very quick around the back as well. Just a great track. And it was near the airport. Everything was convenient. Yeah, it was hot and humid, but you know, and... yeah, Diego Marina says Grand Prix People. That's the book I showed earlier. Another great book by Gerald Donaldson. Yeah, lovely book. Worth reading, actually. Very inspiring books. Max 790 says, as Peter, as a Lewis fan, I think he was at his best in 07. Although the cars got even better at Merck, I don't think his driving improved. Why do you think he stagnated or even regressed? Is it technique? Well, 07 he was really good, and as Cory said, he could have won the World Championship in 07. Had that weird gearbox glitch at Brazil, which they never really got on top of, which Mark Slades talked about. They never really could even retrace it when they got back to base, but it definitely was a real thing in the race, obviously. And he lost it to Kimi, the championship. But he could have easily won it in 07. If you look at, 06, he was phenomenal in GP2, won the championship, that amazing race at Istanbul. When he finished second, actually, he spun, didn't he, very early on, and then clawed his way through the field. This was Lewis just dominating traffic, incredible passing maneuvers, and finishing second to Andreas Zuber, I think. Yeah. It didn't really do much else. He had a couple of wins after that following year, but he won yet another GP2 F2 driver to fade away. I think he was Austrian, but he had something strange about him. I think he was raced under Abu Dhabi or Emirates flag or something like that, Dubai, whatever. Anyway, he won that race, and Lewis didn't actually pass Zuber. I remember thinking, what does this mean about Andreas Zuber? But it didn't mean much. Lewis finished second, that was 06, and so he had this aura coming into 07 of being this amazing driver, and he was everything that he was in F2, F3. He was in Formula One, and he was at his best. I think he got better and better, actually. I think, he went slightly off the boil in 16, and I think Nico sort of kicked him into taking more notice of all the technology that it was around to use, and to use it as effectively as he did. And he started to improve. He'd fallen off the boil a little bit with qualifying, I think, and he improved a lot in that area. Got a lot more poles after that. And I think he's generally got better. But the big pivotal moment in his career was, as I said at the time, and I couldn't see any way Lewis was going to get out of Abu Dhabi 21 without it massively affecting him psychologically and probably as a driver as well. And I think, sadly, it's been proved to be correct, because there are all those double whammies, triple whammies, quadruple whammies from that weekend. And he's still suffering from that, and that his driving suffered in the appalling Mercedes that he had for a couple of years with the bouncing and everything else. And he's never really got back to being the driver he was prior to Abu Dhabi 21, of short corners, very confident in what the front of the car is going to do and able to live with whatever the rear is going to do. But he lost all that feel for the front. In an edgy Ferrari this year, it's no better. And Charles can still get the best from it. Right on the edge of a razor blade, he can sit there almost for a race distance with no errors. But for Lewis, he can't do that now. He's been around too long. He's driven too many good race cars. He knows what it can be like when things are going well, and he's confused still, I think. But I think up until 21, he was getting better, more or less, give or take a year, a couple of off years. He got better every year. I think it's one of the great hallmarks of Lewis, that he did continue to improve and was always self-critical, and still is in some way. Diego Marina says, forever grateful for Donaldson, Gerald Donaldson. Guess I got to know the background story of who Peter Windsor really was. Whoops. When I read his book as a 13-year-old growing up in Mexico. Oh, well, there you go. Very nice of Gerry if he did that. But he was a good guy, Gerry. Really nice guy. Morning, Peter. Gulam, this is Gulam Ali. Hope you're well. Always good to see you. Thought I'd tune in whilst wrapping some Christmas presents. Oh, that's nice. Even if Christmas cards maybe in some areas are a thing of the past, good to know that Christmas presents still exist. David Brown 8517 says, I wish I could go back to Brands Hatch. Well, don't we all? I wish we could go back to Brands Hatch for a Grand Prix. And as I've often said, when we sit around saying, Wouldn't it be great to go back to Brands or back to Sepang or back to the Nürburgring or back to the old Spa? The solution is to get all these very, very rich parts of the world which want to be on the Formula One calendar, desperately want to be on the calendar. The solution, sorry, I'm just playing around with my radiator here, warming the hands, is to get them to build renditions of these circuits in the middle of nowhere with lots of runoff area and build a Brands Hatch with all the undulations and build a Nürburgring, build a Spa, build a Sepang. That's what I think we should do. Or rebuild Sepang in Malaysia. It doesn't have to be in the middle of the Nevada desert or the Sahara desert. But we need to have Brands, we need to have Nürburgring, and we need to have Clermont-Ferrand. Can I suggest that as well? Greetings, Peter. Which is your favourite modern sports car? Well, there's a question and a half. Do they still make sports cars these days? They have all these stupid supercars and hypercars, so it wouldn't be one of those. I think the little Mazda Miata is pretty good still. Lotus Elan copy that it is. No, everyone will say, well, that's a load of rubbish, Peter. But no, I like to think there's a bit of a Elan in there. Yeah, it would probably be that. If I actually went for a genuine sports car, in other words, lightweight, nimble, agile, well-balanced, it would be something like a Mazda Miata. What else? Who else? The Alpine, probably. It's a bit overpriced, though, isn't it? You can't really call that a sports car. Anything over 40,000 is not a sports car, is it? Sports cars should be what Austin Healey Sprites, MGAs, MGBs, Lotus Elans used to be. That's a sports car. And how many manufacturers actually build those today? Little two-seaters, hopefully convertible. Not many. Mazda, yeah. I'm trying to think if Toyota don't do that anymore, do they? I'm trying to think of the decent manufacturers out there. Renault with the Alpine, but it's a bit expensive. No. Do Fiat do any? No. So have to be the Miata. I don't think there's any competition, is there, if I think about it, in terms of modern cars. I've got an Elan, which I love, and then two performance hot hatches, the i20N Hyundai and the Skoda Rally 2 Fabia, and a Lotus Cortina. So, yeah. Sis Wehadebi, 1690. Season's greeting to you and the family, Peter. Thank you very much indeed, Sis. Condolences to your mates' families. Yeah, we've talked about the two we lost at the start of the show, but, there's so many out there that I would love to send condolences to and say we're thinking of them. It's so sad that there is that side of life as well, isn't it? But anyway, you've got to keep smiling, as my mum says. You've taught us a lot. You've taught a lot of us the importance of being a decent person. Thank you. Well, if I have, I'm very lucky to have been able to do that. Thank you very much for mentioning that. And we can learn even from the microcosm that is motorsport. It's actually a microcosm of life, and that's one of the great things about all these things. When you really focus on them, you can see all the different parts of life and all the different types of people in life, and all the events that disturb us in life also disturb us in motorsport. Drew C. I recently watched the Dallas Grand Prix when Nigel collapsed from heat because of pushing the car to the finish because he wanted the points. That's determination. Push the car for 2 laps. English guys are crazy. Made my day. It was 2 laps. It was about half a lap, I think, maybe less, a third of a lap probably. Yeah, and Jack Brabham pushing his car across the line to clinch the 59 World Championship at Sebring in a Cooper Climax. And yeah, we have that. But that's more Nigel, it wasn't for the points he was doing it. He just wanted to finish the race. That's what it was. It was the Dallas Grand Prix after all. It was the US Grand Prix in Dallas. Yeah, he wants to finish this race. He got out and pushed it. I don't think Nigel was thinking, I've got to get some points here. For Nigel, it was winning or nothing. I mean, second, third, who cares about that? I think that would be the same for Ayrton Senna. Any proper race driver, Sterling Moss, second, third, interested? Podium? What's a podium? Not interested in podium finishes. Winning, thank you. Garland, trophy, that's about it. 26 prediction from Nels Hart. Well, I predict that it's going to be very difficult to predict at the moment. That's all I can say. I'm not going to get into this one because there's so many regulation changes. Okay, I will make one prediction. I think Aston Martin Honda will be really quick. And Fernando Alonso has a very good chance of winning the World Championship. That'll be my prediction at the moment. Dustin Hudson, Active Arrow in 26, not to be controlled by drivers. Well, I think the jury's still out a little bit on that. Hopefully we've created enough noise and fuss saying that it's a dodgy thing to be doing for there still to be question marks about it. Most of the engineers to whom I've spoken about Active Arrow are all saying, we're concerned. So I hope they just ban the whole thing and we go back to having proper race cars, but that won't happen, will it? Got to have lots of overtaking. That's what Grand Prix racing's all about. Overtaking. Defense, not interested. Overtaking. Yassine 9593. Hi Peter, hope you're well. Do you think these new regulations will improve racing? I think Formula One are so focused on the number of overtakes that the actual driving standards. That's obviously just about what I was saying. I can't see the end of your thing. I was just scrolling down to see if you finished that sentence, but you don't. Well, no, I don't think you need to. Formula so focused on the number of overtakes than the actual driving standards. Well, yeah, as I say, I mean, there's so many parts to driving that are not just overtaking. It's the start, it's the defense, it's the way you control the tires, manage the tires, the fuel. There's a million things that a good racing driver needs to be doing. Lapping slower cars and knowing how to hold up another car without doing anything illegal. All that stuff requires skill. And I think the new regulations are focused very much at the moment, I think the band-aids they're putting on the regulations are focused very much on ensuring that the Formula One cars are still super quick in a straight line and very quick over the lap in some form, even though the regulations they've come up with in theory are going to make them slower. And beyond that, they're desperate to try and have as much overtaking as possible because they think that's the easiest way to sell it to the public and the most obvious way to sell it to the public and to the business world out there. Number of overtakes, lots of overtakes. So I do think they're focused much too much on that in answer to your question, and I do think it's to the detriment of the regulations and the sport. So, yeah. Obviously, seriously, Peter, is it true that Max and Nelson are the only drivers to win more than one World Drivers' Championship in a non-World Championship, Constructors' Championship car? More than one. So over to you, Cory, I think, on that one. I'm just going to have a very short break, if I may. I'll be back in 2 seconds. Yeah, one thing I did just then was look up my race report from the 75 South African Grand Prix, because we were talking about that. Jody Scheckter crashed his Elf Tyrrell in the closing moments of practice. An engine failed as he tested his spare chassis on race morning. Wow, there's quite a lot going on for you. But for 76 of the race's 78 laps, Jody Scheckter commanded his home Grand Prix. I remember the headline actually now. One of the newspapers on the Sunday morning, because the race is on a Saturday, was Crash Bang Jody. In other words, the engine went bang, he had a shunt, and then he still won the race. The two Brabhams on the front row, Carlos Pache, Carlos Reutemann, Jody, Nicky Lauda, second row, Patrick Depailler in the other Tyrrell, Mario in the Parnelli on the third row. Very cool. Vittorio Brambilla that was the year Vittorio Brambilla in the Beta Tools March threw some security guard or something into a swimming pool at the Santon Sun Hotel, I think it was. It was kind of a big drama going on behind the scenes that year. Carlos was second, Carlos Reutemann, Patrick Depailler third, Carlos Pache fourth, Nicky Lauda fifth, Jochen Mass sixth in the McLaren, and then Rolf Stommelin in the Lola. Of course, that was the car that had the carbon rear wing mounting that then failed in the Spanish Grand Prix. Next race, probably, or a couple of races after that. So what have I got here? Rolf Stommelin put an impressive performance in the newest of the Graham Hill Embassy Lola. Differently shaped chassis, repositioned oil coolers. They have a very strange wing above the engine as well, tiny little wing. So there you go, yeah, my race report, South African Grand Prix. I'll just read the opening bit of it. For most of the South Africans present at Kyalami, it was sufficient that Jody Scheckter should lead for a couple of laps. That he should drive one of the greatest races of his short career was beyond belief. But that's what happened, and there was little that Carlos Reutemann, Martini Brabham could do about it. The speed of the revised Elf Tyrrells was emphasised by Patrick Depailler's fine drive to third place, while Carlos Pache's Martini Brabham finished a worthy fourth. It was a magnificent race, a far-fetched happening that began a long time before flagfall. Sounds like Windsor's getting a bit over the top here. Yeah, okay. They were the days when you wrote long race reports. Looks like about 3,000 word race report there. Autocar 1975 March. Anyway, thanks very much for all that, whoever asked that question. Very good. Obviously, seriously, I've got number plates on my car since June 2016. Okay, good. Max was so early in Formula One that he could develop. Thank you. You know what I'm talking about, says Ivan Borg. Hi, Peter. What do you make of Adam Norris's comments after Lando won? Didn't actually hear them or see them, to be honest. I switched off as the checkered flag came out. Got on with the video. Ivan Borg. Very difficult to compare cross eras, but because drivers' careers overlap, you can make some comparison. Max has the beating of anyone going back through the years until you hit Jim Clark. Yeah, I think that's basically what Cory thinks. And I would say, having been privileged to watch both Jim and Max drive, that they're very, very similar in the way they drive. The style of driving is very similar. The way they use the car, the way they get it early into the corner, the sweet spot they create, their rates of input are just perfectly in harmony with all the things going on with the car. Downforce, no downforce, whatever, if you compare a Lotus 49 with a Red Bull, they're just two different animals, but in reality they're the same animal. They're race cars. They understeer, they oversteer, and they have power understeer when you don't want it as well. So yeah, they're very, very similar and very talented, both of them, and both racers in my view. Ivan Borg says, got into motorsport watching Formula One on Italian TV with my grandpa. He always told me that Fangio versus Ascari would be the same level of sport rivalry as Frazier versus Ali, if it hadn't been tragically cut short. Yeah, I mean, the jury's definitely out. As I said, Dennis Jenkinson, that picture, that's me, Morris, and Nigel Roebuck listening to the great words of Dennis Jenkinson. And he wasn't particular, I don't think he was talking about it then, but he definitely said, yeah, in his view, Ascari was quicker than Fangio. And as I said to Cory, you can look at Ascari 52, 53, and it can be a little bit exaggerated because of where the Formula One was then. The regulations were Formula 2, basically, and there was no opposition. But if you look at Ascari, let's say 54, when he had the Lancia D50, he was really quick, straight out of the box in that car. It was an unreliable car, and it didn't have enough backing to find its reliability and really find a groove, but he was super quick. And I suspect it's probably then that Fangio's thinking about Ascari and how good he was in that car, as much as 52, 53. DCO says, I believe Verstappen was not kidding that one Formula One World Drivers' Championship was all he wanted. No, I don't think he was kidding either. And I think, he is, I mean, a great driver like Max, like Jim Clark, lesser extent Jackie Stewart, lesser extent Michael, they're very curious about driving and about what it's like to put this specific car on the limit and what it requires to do that. And, if in a quiet moment, you could probably talk to Max about races that he has not won, but he's nonetheless got 100% from a difficult car and finished, I don't know, third, fourth, whatever. And he'll probably find those just as satisfying as winning a Grand Prix, because getting the best from a difficult car is, to some extent, what it's all about. Super chat from Otgu. Peter, love your channel. Thanks very much. Is there an argument to be made that 25 was the best Max we've seen so far, but without the car to convert? Yeah, definitely. I think he's getting better every year. So the Max you're seeing now is better than any Max you've seen beforehand, as we talked about, Cory and I, because he's improving in so many areas. And next year, what will it be? I mean, probably the area of improvement for Max next year will be his versatility, because I suspect he's going to do more of those races at the Nürburgring, in the Ferrari or whatever car he's going to do it in. And that'll take a little bit of time and attention. And I think he's probably going to do that because he's not 100% convinced that the Red Bull Ford is going to be the greatest Grand Prix car of all time, and that he's going to need to have some other things to do, and he'll be developing those other skills. And that's probably how he's thinking. He won't be thinking, oh, I hope the Red Bull's a race-winning car. He'll be thinking, well, if it's not, this is how I'm going to expand my driving and keep motivated. This is what I'm going to do. This is motor racing, and I love the fact that I'm a racing driver and I can do all these different things. And that's why he's as good as he is. because he doesn't think, oh, if I don't have a great Grand Prix car, my life is over. And that's the great thing about Max. And other great drivers, similar. Boracic time. Talking to Ivan Borg here, Ascari was one of the top 5 drivers ever. Yeah. Harsh it but. Hi Peter, love from India. Could you share any stories from the days of Force India and VJ? Only that it was, he was given a very hard time. You know, it was almost as if the political journalists out there couldn't wait for the day when he was going to be arrested for this or that and thrown in jail. In VJ we're talking about, and you know, wasn't it terrible? And I at the time, and I said this at the time, that yes, he probably was, you know, it wasn't going to end well. But then how many other team owners of Formula One had of that ilk? You know, Formula One attracts people like that. So why was everybody suddenly jumping on VJ's case? There have been plenty of others, and they'll remain nameless now, but plenty of others who've gone on to win world championships who are just as disreputable. And I respected him for putting the amount of money he did into that team, Force India, and making it as good as it was. You know, it was a really good team. Andy Stevenson, Andy Green, Tom McCullough, and it was a quick car. You know, if you think about guys like Adrian Sutil, I mean, how he looked really good in that car. He was a quick driver anyway, Sutil, but he was very, very good. You know, Fisichella. It was a great team, and in reality, they've actually done better than Aston Martin have done. If you take into account the additional money that Aston Martin have and all the facilities and everything else that goes into it, Force India actually did a better job on a much smaller budget than Aston Martin. Now that'll probably change now that Adrian Newey is there. It will change because it'll be an Adrian Newey team, and he'll basically be running it the way he's always wanted to run a Formula One team, the engineering and the rest of it as well. And I still have enormous respect for Adrian's ability. But until now, I haven't seen anything at Aston Martin where I've thought, oh, that's you know, Force India. Can you believe those guys were you know, even thinking of going racing? Force India, in a much smaller place, in much fewer facilities, much smaller team, were over delivering with their results. So I've got a lot of time for them, and I think he actually had his heart in the right place with drivers as well. You know, he started to generate an Indian driver academy, which was going pretty well, and that's all petered out now, and Formula One haven't adopted that, which I think is wrong. And so yeah, I actually feel bad that it even was sold and that it all went wrong, because it was a great team. I like that team. I think I still wear a Force India cap periodically in memory of it all. Seema Dragon, the art of defense was lost on Yuki. Well, you can say that again. It just never occurred to him, I suppose, how to do it. Well, but I don't actually blame Yuki for that, because, as I say, he's grown up in an era of impeding and GPS and slow down 5 seconds, 3 seconds, all that stuff, and they've never really learnt how to defend as a result, this era. But it's up to the team to show Yuki how he could have done it. And as I say, all they need to do is rerun the 99 Malaysian Grand Prix, show Yuki, make him watch every lap, sit him down and watch what Michael does. But, you know, yellow, everybody says Tamako Road. Yeah, I know. My yellow beanie. There you go. I'll never live that one down. Shakiran 79. Are there any personnel in the Formula One paddock who you think have experience of active aero that might give their teams an advantage? Not that I know of, no. I don't think you need to have experience of active aero. You mean on a technical engineering point of view, or do you mean from a operational race point of view? I don't think they have, but I don't think it's that difficult. It's just there, you know. It's a thing that you can now do, and therefore it'll be there. The problem is things that go wrong and the difference between one car and another. If all the cars were the same, it would be a little bit more plausible, but they're not, for a start. And secondly, things go wrong. The minute you start playing around with them, things go wrong. The reason they don't have electric demisting visors, because they might go wrong, and you don't want something going wrong in a race. You know, if that can go wrong, what do you think can happen with active aero? You know, To me, it's crazy. Daniel Brodsky. Hi, Peter. The goatiest of all goats who ever goated. Who? How do you think short corner... I don't think you're talking about me there. How do you think short corner drivers will have even more advantage or not next year? Well, it won't manifest itself in short corners being, an obvious thing. As I say, in order to create a short corner with the car you've got to have a lot of great physical attributes, and you've got to have this innate feel for perfect rates of input, managing the dynamic movement and weight of the car, and you're not overloading it in any area, and you're keeping everything very stable. And if you've got that ability, even if you don't create a short corner, you're going to be doing a better job with tire management, with fuel management, and with having more room in your zone to cope with sudden variables like crosswind or oil on the track or whatever. Or everything opens up. And then in addition, as a bonus, you might want to create the odd short corner or two. But it's all to do with how much talent you've got. And that talent will still be evident in the results more than probably in the way the cars look on track for drivers who have it, for Charles Leclerc's, for Max Verstappen's, for a little bit of Isaac Hadjar. There's going to be advantage there. For Lewis, maybe, if he can get his act together. And so that'll always be there. That'll be there if they're all doing a rally sprint on gravel in Toyota Celicas. Some drivers would still have that finesse that others don't. I'm talking about if Formula One drivers all had to get in that situation. So regardless of what you're doing, you're always going to have an advantage if you have all those qualities that I just described. Ivan Borg again. Mansell was one burst tire 86 and one qualifying error 87 from being a three-time champion. Can't measure greatness in championships. No, and 86 he should have been world champion in my opinion, and 87 I would say it was the exhaust manifold crack at Monaco that lost him the championship there. He had that race won easily, and an exhaust manifold cracked because Honda had gone slightly thinner on the gauge without telling Patrick Head. And once an exhaust manifold cracks, obviously on a turbo engine, that's it. You've lost everything. And that's what happened there. It's something very silly. Should never have happened. They should never have lightened the gauge of that. And that was it. That was the world championship gone in that one race, in my opinion. Bit like, Max. If you throw away a top three finish, as Red Bull did for Max in the Spanish Grand Prix, by bringing him in when they should have left him out under safety car conditions to get track position, be P1, and finish the race, the last 9 laps of the race on used softs, I think he would have been top 3 and he would have been world champion. I still think that was the most obvious place. And I'm not one for saying it was this race or that race. It's a complete season. It's a cumulative thing. But if you want to take the most obvious one, where all the hard work was done and over, it was Spain, in my opinion. Roop Shenzi. Hi, Peter. Thanks for your brilliant comments. Well, thank you very much. Why do media only concentrate on the final lap in Abu Dhabi 21? Hamilton was off the track and was allowed to keep his place among many other instances. Yeah. And so, I mean, there have been lots of spurious steward decisions over every season, every race probably, and 21 was no different. It's just that what happened we know that if a driver goes off track and gains position and isn't penalized, it's annoying, but it's not the only time that happens. It happens quite a lot, and different sets of stewards look at it in different ways, and we're kind of used to that. Mexican Grand Prix this year, good example. But when something happens like it's in a controlled situation behind a safety car and everything's basically stopped and it's really slow, and you completely sidestep the regulations and the rules, and you suddenly say, oh, on this occasion lap cars don't have to unlap themselves, and all of a sudden you've got Max on new tyres and Lewis on old tyres. That's not the same as a steward having a bit of a marginal decision about whether somebody's gained a second on this leaving the track here or not. That's a completely different thing, in my opinion. And that's what happened there. It was an absolutely ridiculous decision, which was very clear cut in the rule book, and it was just broken. The rule was broken, and for no reason other than that presumably there was pressure. Obviously Red Bull was saying, fine, let's carry on. But equally, I guess there was pressure of this race, this great showdown race between Max and Lewis cannot finish behind a safety car. It has to finish as a race. And that was the problem. It was that thing. Why? It would have been a great thing. If they'd come around behind the safety car with Lewis winning his 8th World Championship, the fireworks going off, it would have been brilliant. Great way to end. No problem. They had this thing, it's a bit like this thing about overtaking. Got to have lots of overtaking. Can't finish behind a safety car. It's just juvenile. Another super chat. Hi Peter, love your channel, thanks. Thank you very much indeed. Is there an argument to be made that 25 was the best Max we've seen so far without the car to convert? Well, I think we've had that question, and I think if I've answered it already, apologies. But I would say it was the best Max. And because he is getting better all the time. And I think in 27, 26, 27, 28, we'll see even better Max, assuming he's still in Formula One. I say that because, he might want to go and do something else. Mo Paval. Hi, Peter. If you were Oscar's... I'm just reading the previous one, actually. Okay. If you were Oscar's manager, where would you advise him to go if he leaves McLaren? Personally, I think he'd be a great fit at Mercedes. Well, the first thing is, why would I encourage him to... Why would he leave McLaren would be the first thing. Because there's every reason to stay at McLaren and keep going as he is. Lando's the guy that might have thought about leaving, but now he's won a world championship. I don't think he'll care either way. I think Oscar will stay there, and I think he'll think, yeah, I can get the measure of Lando now. If the car's good, I can win a championship now. I'm sure that's what Oscar's thinking. So I would be encouraging him to stay at McLaren if I was managing Oscar. If McLaren said, right, we've signed Charles Leclerc, Oscar, you're out, where would I send him? Depends, there's those teams, isn't it? There's obviously Mercedes, there's Red Bull, there's Ferrari, maybe Aston Martin. I would want to get him in an Adrian Newey car, I guess, if I could. Be the first port of call. And then I would think maybe Ferrari, because we all think that if we went to Ferrari with the right setup and the right driver and the right people, we can actually make it work. And I still think that's a possibility. If you went there on a clean sheet of paper with Oscar and a few good engineers, I think you could do a very good job at Ferrari. Mercedes, I don't know about Mercedes. It's, to me, that's George Russell and Kimi. George leaves, yeah, maybe. A bit boring, really, isn't it? And then Red Bull, Isaac Hadjar, Oscar Piastri, yeah, pretty good team. Depends how good Red Bull are going to be in this era, this 26 era. Obviously a completely new car now without Adrian at all, and with the power unit, how good that will be, who knows? Depends. If it's a good team, yeah, you'd put him in there. But in general, I'd advise him to stay at McLaren. On a quali lap, outlap, how long would it take to get up to speed as they cross the line? It's a good question as well. I've often asked drivers, I try to ask drivers whenever I can, when they start that lap. And it's, because they're so precise, the engineers, in managing the formation lap in terms of burnouts and the front tire temperature, rear temperature. They seem to be a little bit less precise on those outlaps before a qualifying lap. And so they don't seem to be mega precise in terms of where actually to start the lap. If you take Hungary as an example, if there's that long right-hander before the start, and they come out and then they got the start-finish line. what is the quickest way of getting to that? Is there a quicker way of getting to that start-finish line without driving absolutely flat out through that last corner and maybe overusing the tyres, I guess is the question. And maybe there is, maybe even a sort of wide turn-in Carlos Sainz would think, yeah, I'm going to do a Sebastian Vettel here, diamond the corner, go in, brake really late, and then just do a V and just do an acceleration run from mid-corner, dead straight. Maybe that's slightly quicker. But you don't hear a lot of talk about that, and I often wonder about that, how they work that out. I don't think it's a very precise science, actually, that. I think they just do it on feel and what feels right. And obviously when you're starting a lap at, say, Abu Dhabi, or most corners really, Austria is another good one, you don't want to be running wide on curb coming out of that last corner, do you? So at what point do you compromise the exit by not being on the curb? Do you run a little bit wider and get a straighter exit, or what? How do you do it? Interesting. It's a good thing to talk to a driver about. They'll probably say, oh yeah, well, just do what feels right. Of course, the whole thing was turned on its head by Keke Rosberg in 82, I think. So 82 at Spa, when he just when the start finish line was on the downhill bit, not where it is now, but it's where the old pits are, where the F2 pits are. That's where the start finish line was. And Keke just on his outlap just went brake much too late for La Source, went right up the top of the hill and just went flat out. He was like fifth gear by the time over the start finish line. Very good. Yeah, can't do that anymore, sadly. Dillstar says, I'm interested who'll improve and make another step. Well, look no further than Aston Martin. They will improve, believe me. Improve with a capital I. Adrian Alaziz, because Leclerc is not Rubens Barrichello, they have two number one drivers in a team. And if Ferrari is not the best car, if someone else is dominant, they would push Charles out. Really? Not sure about that. I think they would push Lewis out, wouldn't they? Now? There's quite a lot of clamouring going on at Ferrari or Italy about even in 26 it should be Leclerc Behrman. But I don't think it'll happen because obviously Lewis wants to continue and he's got a cast iron contract. It'd be too embarrassing for Ferrari after everything they've done to get Lewis, then to go into a massive lawsuit and have to pay him a fortune not to race. So that won't happen, I don't think. But I think the penny's dropping at Ferrari that they got Vettel with 4 world championships behind him, put him in a Ferrari, couldn't get the best from him. Kimi won a championship, but now the same thing's happened with Lewis. All these world championships, they get Lewis and they just can't do anything with him. And I think Ferrari are starting to realise that it's them and not the drivers, and that they're just too big, they're too disorganised, they're too political, too unable actually to understand how human beings operate. And so it goes on. How it'll change? It won't change, really. I don't think this bit will change. John Elkann probably still thinks that the drivers need to talk less and drive more, or whatever he thinks. I don't know. F13 Tamako Road. I hope Ferrari at least gets the engine right. I think you mean Ferrari there. Caddy will be top 6 team if they do. Oh, well, yeah, they might be. I think Ferrari, at the moment, they've got quite a good power unit. So in theory, they know what they're doing. But do they know what to do without the MGUH and with a lot more electric on the car? Are they going to be a match for Mercedes, Honda, even Ford in that respect? I don't know. Yeah, you corrected it to Ferrari. Skoda, yeah, I've got a Skoda, says Tamako. Yeah, I've got a limited edition. They only made 100 of them. It's a Rally 2 version of the Fabia, and it's got an ABT power upgrade, 200 horsepower, OZ wheels, and really nice car, lighter as well. Bright green, great car, love it. Nick Maka says, Peter, who do you think wins the championship next year? Well, the risk of stating the obvious, which would be McLaren and presumably Oscar on this occasion rather than Lando. The interesting choice would be Fernando Alonso, because he's still quick, as he proved even in Abu Dhabi, and it's an Adrian Newey team now. It's a shame the car's got called a Newie. Actually, it'd be better, wouldn't it? Aston Martin, Honda. It says, love your reactions, thanks. I don't know. I've got to, I'm going to have to wind this up soon. Well, Peter, what are your thoughts on Formula One returning to Portugal 27? Well, my immediate thought was, wow, Estoril back on the calendar. And then I thought, no, it won't be Estoril, will it? And I opened the email, sure enough, it's Portimao, which is okay. You know, it's another of those circuits, isn't it? Not Estoril, that's for sure, which is a great circuit. I loved Estoril. But yeah, no, good to have Portugal back, definitely. Lovely. It's got a lot of racing history and nice part of the world. A lot going for it. And yeah, great. So you're going to have Portimao, you're going to have Madrid, you're going to have Barcelona probably. So a lot going on down in the Iberian Peninsula. Vito Corleone. Great name. Hi, Peter. Season greetings. Why doesn't Ferrari adopt Schumacher-like setup to be successful? And if Lewis is unsuccessful in 26, will it not damage the Ferrari Formula One brand? Well, yeah, you know, that's it. You put all this money into getting brand Lewis, and then the stock market goes ballistic and you make all the money back straight away. But then, as I said before, you know, if they'd not even thought about getting Lewis, but their only focus was on getting Adrian Newey and making sure that whatever Adrian wanted, they delivered, I guarantee the amount of money they would be making winning world championships with Adrian Newey would be more than the money they've made with Brand Lewis. And now, as you correctly say, the Brand Lewis is a bit tarnished, and maybe that's going to fall away exponentially the other way now. So they, whatever way you cut it, they made a wrong decision at the wrong time to think that their problem was that Carlos Sainz wasn't good enough and had to be replaced by Lewis Hamilton. I mean, that in itself was wrong, but it wasn't the overlying problem anyway. The problem is the car, not the drivers, as I keep saying. You know, they should be in the position now that Aston Martin are in, where Adrian's team principal and running the team. Still be a Ferrari, still be red, still be the prancing horse. And if they're winning world championships, everyone will love them. Everyone important that matters to them will love them. And they're not doing it because they got it wrong. What can you say? Poor management, very poor decisions at the top level. Ronnie Way, hi Peter, season's greetings. Your knowledge in motorsport is unparalleled. Not really. There are many better people than I out there. I'm just lucky enough to have this platform on which to do this. And thank you very much, everybody, including you, Ronnie, for your comments that enable this show to happen at all. Do you think they should ditch World Champion Award in place of the driver with the most wins at the end of the season? Well, it's not bad, is it? I mean, in a way, you'd still have a world championship because you'd say, who's going to be the winningest driver at the end of the year? Is it going to be Max Verstappen? He's on 7. Is it going to be Lando Norris? He's on 7. Then you got the same build-up as if it's a world championship anyway. And they'd all be going for the win rather than the points. I personally think that's a great idea, and I would love that to happen. But I can tell you now, it won't happen, so not much point thinking about it for too much more. We might as well live with what we got, because we know that is what's going to continue. This is when I went off for a couple of minutes. You could have an intermission. Be back soon. Screen with dancing popcorn buckets. Yeah, okay, I'll get the dancing popcorn buckets in there for next time, okay? Hasta luego, everyone. Okay. Sebastian Penisi, Mr. Windsor, hope you and your family have a wonderful Christmas. Peter, please. But yeah, thank you very much. And New Year's. Thank you for your great insight. Cheers from Tacoma, Washington, USA. Thank you very much indeed, Sebastian. Very kind of you. Lovely part of the world. Washington. I think Washington State we're talking about over on the West Coast, right? Beautiful. And he says he's Mr. Windsor. This is from Sebastian Penisi as well. Great, looking forward to you and Cam in 26. Thank you. Yeah, good old Cam. What's he up to? He's always talking about got to make some changes, do this. Annoying music. It's like having 2 apps open. Oh, well, I don't run music often. I just thought because Cory is a musician, I'd run a bit of music. But anyway, there you go. I think maybe because it's in stereo and the audio was in mono, maybe that was the reason. And we'll learn from all our mistakes. But I didn't have it very loud, did I? So there you go. So Athavaka Makalaga, sorry, I can't pronounce your name. I've been doing this for too long now, over 2 hours. Will the new regs be beneficial for certain drivers? Like all regs, like all cars, it'll be beneficial to guys that have the skill sets of the type enjoyed by Max Verstappen, Charles Leclerc, Lewis to some extent, a little bit of George, a little bit of Lando, a little bit of Oscar, a little bit of Isaac. You know, that skill set, but highlighted mainly by Max and Charles, will always be advantageous, regardless of what car you're in. Jotma, hi Peter, do you know of any driver who would listen to music while racing now or in the past? Was it ever allowed in any race competition? Nigel used to sing a bit in the car when things are going quite well, to the confusion of Honda. We wonder what he was doing, and Renault for that matter. So, you know, a bit of Nigel. I remember Eddie Cheever saying once, after a qualifying lap of Spa in the Renault, I think it was in the Renault, that the lap was as good as he could have driven. He just wished he'd had Beethoven in his headset at the time he was driving it. I thought that was pretty cool. Elio used to listen to music a lot, but not in the car. I don't think the technology was there. No, it definitely wasn't there. So that's the other thing, the technology of listening to music. And these days, of course, you've got to listen to the engineer rather than the music. But it's a good point, though, isn't it? You'd think a guy like, Oscar, perhaps, for example, might want to have a button where he's just fed up, doesn't want to listen to the radio, and just wants to have a bit of music, and just presses his button for music. Be quite good, wouldn't it? And he controls it. They can't do it from the pit wall. Mega. We should have that. Max too. Wonder what sort of music Max would listen to. Yeah, bit of well, could be anything actually. Knowing Max, probably fairly versatile in his and who was that? Johnny Claes, wasn't it? The Belgian jazz band leader, who was pretty good single-seater driver, did a few Grand Prix. Johnny Claes and the Clay Pigeons. We're talking the 40s now. Maybe Max is his fan, because I think it was quite not far from where Max was born, I think, or lived, that part of Belgium on the Dutch border around there. So yeah, Johnny Clay. He probably listened to Johnny Claes. Yeah. Then of course there was the lots of different bands being associated with motor racing. I mean, George Harrison obviously used to come to a lot of races as well. Phil Collins used to come to races with Jackie Stewart. Chris Barber, of course, in the 60s with his jazz band, was part of Formula One. Famous. Have you ever seen it? If you haven't seen it, you must watch a documentary called Brands Hatch Beat. It's about the 64 British and European Grand Prix, the first World Championship Grand Prix held at Brands Hatch. It's all in beautiful colour. And it's introduced by Chris Barber, and a lot of the music is Chris Barber's jazz band. And he was a big deal at the time. And he loved Formula One. Hung around with all the drivers. Shazshank Abi, Mr. P, your channel's a joy. How much did 21 mess with Hamilton? It seems like he's still not over it, which might be affecting his racing now. Well, I'm sure as much as he dusted it off and wanted to go racing in 22 as Lewis Hamilton, albeit in a bad car with George Russell in the car and having just lost the World Championship in ridiculous circumstances, there was no way he was going to be able to just dust that off, as I said at the time, and I've said ever since. And it has had an effect. And I'm sure he doesn't think about that. And I'm sure he doesn't think that is the case, because it would be negative for him to think that way. I'm sure he only looks forward to the day ahead. But I think it did have an effect. And the main one was how to get the best from a really bad, difficult car that probably scared him a bit in a couple of places as well, that Mercedes. And he just sort of lost his confidence as a driver. And I don't think he's ever got that back. And he's never really driven a decent car since Abu Dhabi 21, to be honest. Yes, the Merc's been okay on occasions, or was okay. But, you know, maybe the Ferraris had the odd lap or two when it's felt all right. But as a general rule, over a Grand Prix distance, I don't think he's had a decent car since then. And that's eaten into his confidence, because he never really had to deal with that. And his driving has suffered as a result. And he doesn't really have the confidence of... He doesn't have the knowledge of how to get it back now. And nothing short of a quick, sharp lesson of 6 or 7 sessions with Rob Wilson, in my opinion, will get it back for Lewis. I don't think it'll happen unless the car, next year's Ferrari, is magically brilliant and incredible downforce front and rear, balance, predictability, great power, the best car in the field by a mile. Yes, Lewis will then get all his stuff back again, for sure. But if it isn't that, and it's a car that you have to work hard to drive well and get the best from, I think he's going to be struggling still. Hi, Peter. Why do you think Toyota's in this relationship with Haas? And do you think anyone on the board is thinking of going back to Formula One? Could they do it while still doing WEC? I think they're going back because of the way the team is run now. You know, we've got really good team principal there who can see that there's so much logic in trying to get Toyota to help them as much as possible in every way without actually having to put a step in and do a team or an engine again. And he's doing that incredibly well. And it's a logical thing for him to be doing. And the Toyota people obviously respect the job he's doing at Haas and feel comfortable. And Toyota's a great company in terms of motorsport these days. They've got a great leader, and he loves everything to do with motorsport and helping young Japanese drivers and drivers in general like Kalle Rovanperä. And to tap into that is a great thing. It's very logical to do. You know, it's very easy to say it, but if I was in his position, I'd be doing exactly the same thing. You don't want Toyota coming in doing their own thing if you're that. You just want to have everything they can give you. The facilities in Cologne, bit of money here, back up there, some technology here. All that stuff is great. And it looks really good to me because they've got high tech as well as a team that will be part of it's part of that whole Toyota thing. And they're associated with a team in Super Formula as well. So it all makes sense to me. And I think it's a great way for Toyota to do it. And put it another way, if I was at Toyota, I'd be doing something like that because it's more logical and you get all the benefit of logo exposure without having all the drama of having to do a team. And look what happened last time they tried to do a team. They did a team. To my mind, it was a very good team, very well run by John Howett. Good engines, good aero, good wind tunnel, good everything. And all the Formula One world did was trash them and try to get them out of the sport as soon as possible. You know, Bernie, Ron Dennis, it was all just like, isn't this pathetic? The money they're wasting, they should be doing it this way, that way. Nobody ever stood up and said, congratulations, Toyota, we love having you in Formula One, world's biggest car company, welcome. It was always, wish Toyota, everyone was rubbishing them all the time. So they learnt from that. Let's do it nicely now. And I think they're doing a great job with Haas, and good luck to them. I mean, it's a bit odd, isn't it, that they're going to have a Ferrari engine and Toyota logos, but Toyota have been there before. In America, they've done a lot of that over the years. SDM 107 says, the FIA should have awarded both Max and Lewis the World's Drivers' Championship in 21. Okay. This would have been the best outcome, in my opinion. Yeah, well, yeah. You're probably right. I'm not sure Lewis would have accepted that. Equally, I'm not sure Max would have accepted that, or Red Bull. I think if that had been on the plate, Lewis has said, well, I'm either world champion or I'm not. You know, if you think I should have won it, then make me world champion. And I think that's what Mercedes should have taken to court much further along the road than they did. I don't think they challenged it anything like hard enough. Because to me, that's a breach of the regulations that could really have come under real pressure had it been taken to the highest possible court of the land. Maybe I'm wrong there, but that had a feel for it, that there was so much wrong about that it could have been reversed. And there's plenty of precedents of things being reversed. Look at the Brazilian Grand Prix, which Kimi Räikkönen supposedly won, and then went to Giancarlo Fisichella 3 weeks later in a trophy presentation at Imola. Yeah, there's a precedent for things like that. And yeah, it's the World Championship. It's not great for the sport, but ultimately, it's not great for the sport to have the ending that we had anyway. Rabbi 5229, Hamilton was very good in 23. In 22, the car wasn't good, but he still outscored Russell for the rest of the season when the testing part was over. And in 24, Merck knew he was leaving, and Leclerc a very good driver, and the Ferrari is his car. And, you know, so he should be outscoring George Russell, shouldn't he? I mean, he's the new guy on the block in 22. And I'm not saying that that was the cause. All I'm saying is that if Valtteri Bottas had been there, it would have been one less thing that was aggravating for Lewis Hamilton, in the same way that if Daniel Ricciardo was at McLaren, they still would have won the championships, but it would have been an easier ride. And that's all I'm saying. Yeah, Lewis obviously can still drive. We saw him win the sprint race in China. And as I said, give him a decent car and he'll still be right there. An easier car to drive. But all those things together definitely added up to a change in style and confidence in how to use the front and the back of the car. And that isn't going to go away until he radically changes what he has. And I don't think, even if I think about it, I'm not even sure Days with Rob would fix it, because I think it's all to do with the mindset of his age, of thinking everything through more, and the profit and loss, the gain and loss of anything you think about. And is it worth doing this for, you know, 9th place? He would say, oh, I never think like that. But probably psychologically, deep down, he does. And that's the thing. Jotma, did you hear what Arrivabene said? That those documents Lewis said is something Vettel did, unclear if they had the same level of analysis, and that Seb's insights were useless. No, I didn't see that. But I mean, I was saying it at the time that I think Vettel went to Ferrari as completely the wrong driver to go to Ferrari, because he went there having been blown away by Daniel Ricciardo at Red Bull for a year when the regs had changed and the downforce came out of the rear. And instead of working hard at understanding why Seb Vettel had got beaten by Ricciardo and what Ricciardo was doing with the car that Vettel wasn't, he thought, this is ridiculous. I'm going to go to Ferrari and win world championships there. I'm Sebastian Vettel, 4 times world champion. And of course, because he didn't fix those things, it never worked. And that's why his feedback was not great, because he was not getting the best from the car in the way a Charles Leclerc would. And that's exactly what happened. And that's what I said at the time. I would say, though, that one thing about Arrivabene is that he's got an unbelievably nice signature, not unlike Mario Andretti's, actually. I'm wondering whether it's that A makes it incredibly easy to do a great signature. I noticed it on the wall, the autograph wall at Melbourne one year. Can't say much else about him, but he had a great signature. Ravi 5229, it's not even an Aston Martin. There is zero organizational or engineering tie with Aston. Aston Martin in this era could never create a Formula One team. They lack both. They lack both money as well as an engineering base. Well, yeah. Don't tell Lawrence Stroll that. So this is another super chat. If Leclerc had the cars Lewis has had, how many titles would he have won? There's no way Rosberg is beating him. Lewis has also made a lot of errors in 21. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, maybe Charles would be less emotional and made fewer mistakes and would have won even more championships than Lewis. Who knows? But, you know, if Jim Clark was racing in this era, how many races would he win? You know, you can go on asking these questions forever. The sad fact of life is that Charles, not the sad, the fact of life is that Charles had the growth that he had in the life that he had, as did Lewis. And they both, in their own way, have made it to the top in their own way. And yet Lewis has won 7 championships, Charles hasn't. But that's because Charles never been in a team like Merck. He's always been at Ferrari, where it's very political and they haven't had the great cars. And so it goes on. It's why we love this sport, isn't it? Everything's different for everybody. Jotma says, people keep forgetting that Merck in 21 started as a problematic car because they had to adjust the floor and couldn't make a new car for it. Rosberg was very good. Check his junior career. No, Rosberg was good. He was very good. Was he better than James Rossiter, who often beat Lewis in Formula 3 as well? I think he was better than James, but at the same time, I'm not saying, you know, Rosberg was the greatest racing driver of all time. I'm just saying, yeah, he was good, and he was very good in that era at a time when Lewis was a bit slack, I think, technically. And 21, yeah, every team had its problems in 21. The Red Bull wasn't always brilliant in 21 either. But Mercedes went through the normal thing and got it to be a pretty good car over the season. And Shashank says, I just feel that Lewis has been treated very unfairly by Formula One fans. Lots of hatred. Really? I'm not aware of that. So I hope not. There's no room for hate at all in life, let alone in motorsport. Why? Why hate things? It's just completely nonsensical. Ivan Borg says, Merry Christmas, everybody. Got to go. And I think the same applies to me, really. But I just want to say, Max has a pretty, says Ravi, Max has a pretty general music taste. He gave a playlist once. I remember Michael Jackson was on it. Oh, there you go. Pretty, yeah, I'm not surprised by that. Max, you know, he likes all different types of race cars, different types of music, as do I. And I love Cory's music. And I'll put some details in the description of Cory's site, and you can have a look at his music as well. And if the music was distracting, my apologies. And I will, in no way should Cory be called into account for that, because he's nothing but a good bloke. And his heart is absolutely in the right place at any given moment. So there we are. End of this live stream. Thank you so much, everybody, for watching. And we'll try and get Cory live on the show, I think. Well, I will try to get him live on the show. Won't take no for an answer. And you can talk to him about his music as well next week. That'll sort you all out. So a big thanks to everybody. Big thanks to Jetcraft, OEM Exclusive, to TrackNinja, to REC Watches for their support, and to you, the viewer, for your support. The questions, the great questions and comments, without whom none of this would be possible. So I'll be back with news of when we're going to do the next live stream. In the meantime, we've got plenty of stuff on the podcast channels where you can listen to everything in audio, and of course on the YouTube channel, and I'll keep putting some stuff out on that as well. So take care. Have a good week. Stay safe.